Good evening. I will call this meeting to order. If you will kindly stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you kindly call the roll?
Carmody.
Here.
Fishbein.
Here.
Regan.
Here.
Tata.
Here.
Testa.
Here.
Morone.
Here. All right, and so first item is going to be, we'll do civil preparedness, fire department, and fire marshal, all at the same time, please. Good evening, Chief.
Good evening. Jim Buck, Fire Chief.
Mike Schott, Deputy Fire Chief.
Welcome, and I understand you have a presentation for us tonight.
So I do. I know we're beginning with civil preparedness. Let me shift gears here. Yes, so I'm sure you can appreciate my first budget with you. A lot of this was information gathering, putting together analysis of where we are and where we are going. And I think that was a big part of the entire process for us. As it relates to civil preparedness, emergency management, working with Deputy Emergency Management Director Len Gersha, who acts as our civil preparedness coordinator, really only a couple changes. One was an increase in the wages. We're moving closer to the FEMA rate, which is a standard rate for emergency management professionals. So there was a bump up in the rate there. And there were some modest increases for utilities and a few other items. And the only other major increase was an increase to the operating expenses. There was no capital submitted this year. We rolled that into the operating expenses. The needs there are such that we were able to increase that line item as a proposal to eliminate the capital that typically corresponds with that account. So I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have about civil preparedness.
Questions on civil preparedness? Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening.
I'm looking at the backup, the maintenance of equipment expenses. It says maintenance of equipment used in both emergency operations and support functions, including radios and electronic equipment. Where is that? And it's $1,000. Where is that baked into the budget? What line? Because I didn't see that by itself.
That should be in the main budget packet. That should be its own line item there. Maintenance of equipment 54325.
Okay, I see. So it's 54325. Okay.
Correct.
All right, that's all. I just
want to see where it aligned. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's all I had. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Good evening.
The new CERT team, that's run out of this budget, correct? Or is that something separate?
Yeah, so CERT is, as you know, CERT's a volunteer community emergency response team. They have been in place for a couple years now, a few years. And the CERT team leadership really does a great job. I recently attended a couple sessions of their basic training for new CERT members. And they do a great job of providing support at functions, and we're also looking at ways to expand their scope to even assist at large-scale emergency incidents in a support role.
Okay, so that's been in existence a couple years now?
It's been in existence a few years, and that is part and parcel from this. A lot of the components of emergency management, as you all know, are funded through the Emergency Management Performance Grant. So that is revenue that comes into the town. It's a per capita grant. It's not a competitive grant. and that enables a lot of the funding you see here within this budget.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else on civil preparedness? Members of the public? Okay, Chief, on to Fire Department.
Very well. So, you know, as I mentioned previously, we took a big look at, you know, where are we with our department. And I think what we found was we're doing a lot of things really well. I know we have members of our department here. We do enjoy a combination department. So we have career staff, we have volunteer staff, and we're seeing a big increase in enthusiasm on the volunteer side, and we really have great professionalism from our career members. So when putting this together, you know, I came in from the outside, and so I wanted to really approach this top down. So we started with, all right, well, what are our strengths? What are our weaknesses? So that took the form of a SWOT analysis. You're probably familiar with that. I didn't put up the whole, you know, quadrant because it doesn't display quite as well here, but I broke each one down. So, you know, as we go through it, we'll kind of talk about areas we're strong and areas that we do need improvement on. So the strengths, experience and knowledge of the personnel and our active volunteer companies. We are an ALS response and transport agency for emergency medical. Requires a lot of training, certification, and recertification. That's going on a regular basis. In addition, the department has been groundbreaking with some new opportunities to provide services to those in need, including RSI. So we have a really strong base of emergency medical responders, but keep in mind, they also have to be trained in fire, in hazmat, in emergency vehicle extrication and stabilization. So we're dealing with, you know, so many different types of emergencies, and that knowledge is here. That training is ongoing, and you probably see some of it with our social media posts and other things. We're very proud of our members and the work they do. We're also, another one of our strengths is the capital equipment that has been previously approved and moved forward through the mayor and the council. Our vehicle replacements, we're in good shape with what's coming. Unfortunately, some of our current vehicle needs have increased our costs in the vehicle repair budget, and we'll get to that in a little bit. And we do partner with the other agencies in town all the time. Obviously, police department's a frequent partner, but you know, we're partners with Public Works. The Public Works Garage does preventive maintenance on our apparatus. The public utilities, we're working with them all the time, especially at emergency scenes, but also planning about hydrants, out-of-service hydrants, repairs, things like that. And then, of course, all the other departments in town that we're working with. So we respond to nearly 8,000 calls for service annually, and we do so at a lower cost per incident and also a lower cost per capita when compared to nearly every other department our size that responds in the way we do. And I'll define a little bit more directly the way we respond. We also have revenue. And I think it's an important part when you're considering our budget is we're not just a cost center. What does it cost to run the fire department? But there's revenue. And we continue to increase the revenue and meet and exceed the revenue projections. And a good example of that is getting Medic 3 on the road. Previously, you had approved additional EMTs to staff Medic 3. We now have the Medic 3 unit on the road, and it is tangible results in billing. We've seen a nice increase since that went on the road in January. Mutual aid. We have great mutual aid partners that come in when we have major incidents. It's a great time to have mutual aid. Our Public Works Garage provides our maintenance. And you'll notice replacement pay this year is currently trending below average. I'm sure Chief Shaw and I would love to take the credit for that, but it's really due to, this is kind of a more variable situation where when we don't have a lot of long-term injuries, that number is usually lower, and that's what we're seeing. And we're engaged in a lot of community risk reduction That's more than just fire prevention. It takes on a lot of things, and we partner with some of those agencies we talked about earlier when doing so. So those are our strengths that we're looking at. So now let's talk about some weaknesses. Between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m., our unit utilization is very high. And, you know, this is a variable. And this is a variable based upon what calls come into dispatch that need a fire department response. We can't control that. We can only control what our staffing is. And I would say that no department staffs for every possibility. But we do need to continue to increase our staffing to hit the probable outcomes of a greater surge in calls during the day, and that's what we see. When our engines drop to 2 people, when we have a paramedic ALS response transport, that engine is now a 2-person BLS unit. And so it's important to know what that means and what they can do and what they can't do. And they're still highly trained, experienced, well-equipped, knowledgeable members. They can't be part of a team the way they were before. They have to link up with others to comprise. There's still numbers. So if we have a major incident like a fire, there's still numbers on the fire ground. They can still be part of a 2-in, 2-out team, but they won't be a full company in a 2-person alignment. A lot of our volunteer response is actually outside the NFPA timelines. And this is important, and it's no slight at all. I think it's more of a realization of what a volunteer response typically is. So when we have your volunteers on standby, which we often do, many days a week we have our volunteers on standby, they are ready to respond just like our career staff. However, there are a lot of times where the volunteers have travel time, and many of the volunteers live close to the volunteer station, but it still adds to that overall response time. And you know, so it's important to consider that when we're looking at the number of individuals you need when you first get on scene. I mentioned before the age of our vehicle fleet. It's going to get better in the coming years. Condition of our buildings and their placement across town, very important. You know, there are many times you hear incidents where on the dispatch channel you hear delayed by train. So our town is cut in half. And when that train is coming through, that's real delays. So we're looking at that. We're trying to determine how we're going to manage that. Ability to inspect all buildings as mandated. You know, the state provides mandates for multifamilies, daycares, you know, all types of occupancies. And it's very difficult to maintain that schedule. And you look at an office right now that has 3 people going out the door to provide those inspections. There's a lot for them to do. And maybe Councilor Fishbine's familiar with this, single point of egress legislation. So it is law, it is in place, and it is something we are very concerned about because it is now a situation where some type of building projects can go forward with a single point of egress, and they're relying, for the second point of egress, they're relying on the aerial ladder that these men and women are going to bring to the scene. And it's not permanent infrastructure, and that's the way the legislation reads. So we have to plan for all that. So opportunities. We've seen great modernization of the town's IT infrastructure. That's ongoing. We're building those foundations, and we're certainly looking to partner with them and capitalize on that. There are grant opportunities for capital and staffing. We want to move forward with grant opportunities. We have a dedicated grant staff person, and we're talking every day about the notice of funding opportunities and what comes out and what would be a good fit for us to apply for. We have over 40 volunteers working out of 2 stations. You recently, as you know, have been approving additional benefits to our volunteers as incentives. We want to utilize recruitment to increase that number and continue to have a robust volunteer response. We talked about the new apparatus deliveries that are coming, and we do have a very highly trained staff, but we're looking to continue to continue that training. You'll see the training line item is ticked up a bit because we're noticing a big increase in requests to attend state certification and other training that's out there. And the last thing we want to do is shut off that opportunity. We want to continue the training of our members. So what are some of our threats? Well, I think I addressed it right there in number one. We do have some resistance to funding. And some of that resistance has come from the mayor. Some of that resistance comes from you as the council and the public at large. Anybody watching this on TV right now, they're concerned about taxes. So I think we need to realize that that's a threat. That's a threat to our ability to maintain what we have and continue to grow our operation. We are a bit disadvantaged when you look at competitive grants. In the world of competitive grants, need is part of the scoring model. So we are a little bit disadvantaged there because of the health of the town. It may sound weird, but it actually does work against us in the area of competitive grants when there are towns or municipalities have greater need. Federal OSHA is adopting NFPA standards. Previously, NFPA standards were regulations, guidelines that said this is what you should be doing. They're now adopting those, and we are definitely in a situation where, and we're not alone, every fire department is struggling to meet these NFPA standards so that we don't encounter OSHA violations in the future. We're keeping a close eye on that. We absolutely have a stressed mutual aid system. I talked before that we have mutual aid, that's great, but mutual aid is for large scale incidents. When we have a fire, we need to get those additional personnel to the scene. Mutual aid fills that gap, at least in the immediate short term. But I also talked about our daily surge of calls. And the daily surge of calls, that's not a good fit for mutual aid. Because during the day, when we're having our daily surge, so's Meriden, so's North Haven, so's Hamden, all of our mutual aid partners. They're stretched thin. Fire and EMS mutual aid is stretched thin during the day. It's a reality. And all municipalities are dealing with that. And then you have new threats, EV technologies, solar. They've provided a lot of hazards to our firefighters, and we need to continue to improve our equipment and training to deal with those hazards. So what was the process? I'll go through this quickly. You were all presented the slides, but the process is multi-layered. We don't just say, okay, these are the numbers and that's what we're going with. We do a lot of analysis. We take a look at where we are with our current year spending. We're trying to forecast out new services, new needs, new requirements, and all of it rolls into the budget that you were presented. So when we evaluated this, we said, what are our drivers? What are our big increases? And cost of supplies and equipment, we're all dealing with inflationary pressure. I think we've all heard supply chain, and that phrase. We've dealt with it in our personal budgets, and nothing is getting cheaper. Cost of repairs to our vehicles and our buildings are substantial. Training costs, I mentioned more people training. We want to do that, but it comes at a cost. And then new services. So, we've recently adopted the Haas Alerts, which is a really good, strong firefighter and public safety, but it does have a cost. So we looked at capital projects, and when we put it out to the department, 62 projects came in to my office. So I put this on the slide because I think it's important. I didn't then submit to you 62 requests. We do look at need, we do look at where we are, and we trim that down. Out of the number of projects that were requested, the ultimate proposal before you has 26. So that's after my request, and then the mayor's trimmed it down. Our initial evaluation and where we were with staffing, and when you put a number next to the number of people, it was over $700,000 in salary. So you can imagine how that meeting went. My first meeting with the mayor about that number to spend on new people. And you may say, well, we've been operating without those people. You see the numbers there, 2 new EMTs, 3 new firefighters, 3 new EMS lieutenants, 4 lieutenants promoted to captain, and 1 new fire inspector. That was an alignment I thought would move our department forward. But it does so with a cost. And the mayor explained that's not a budget we can put forward. So it was revised. And, I could go over each position. I think you have the presentation I sent you. We showed how hiring 2 new EMTs could increase and expand the hours that Medic 3 is on the road which does translate into an increase in billing. So there would be a revenue offset. 3 new firefighters, which would bring us into a far more optimal fire response alignment, especially when those ALS providers have to provide transport and ride in. We looked at the EMS lieutenants, and I want to take a little time here just to talk about that role. So the EMS lieutenant has traditionally been an administrative position, and we've had some great people in that position, and they've been on a day schedule, Monday through Friday, and they've been responsible for QA/QI of our EMS calls, which is a requirement. They've been responsible for training, and they also would take on some of the ALS incidents when they were there, Monday through Friday during the day. I see a model where we have an EMS lieutenant on every shift. And they wouldn't just be providing that EMS lieutenant role. We would ensure they were trained to the incident safety officer level. So there's an agency called NIOSH. NIOSH does line of duty death investigations. And if you read a NIOSH report, one of the primary indicators is the lack of a safety officer, lack of an incident safety officer at a fire incident. And I want to avoid that here. We struggle to get, our command staff in the early phase of an incident is 1, car 4. Doesn't have a lot of support at that command post initially. So this is something I want to augment that with a safety officer who will be in that dual role as an EMS lieutenant. So this is something we're working towards, and I've been in contact with how we would, update this position, but it's really one that I want to see move forward and continue to grow in the future. The fire captain position. So years ago, there was a fire captain. They were the shift commander. They were modified to become the battalion chief that is still the shift commander. So there's kind of a vacant position. I'd like to see that position reestablished. It gives a span of control. When there's one person that's the captain on engine 1, then that one person helps supervise the other 3 lieutenants, because right now they're all peers. So the 4 lieutenants on engine 1, they're all good people, and I'm not singling out engine 1. They're all good people, but they're peers. Nobody's gonna, say, hey, I need you to do this. This needs to get done. So it then falls to the battalion chief. So the battalion chief's kind of overseeing 16 lieutenants. So what's a better alignment is if each company has the 3 lieutenants and 1 captain. This isn't a high-cost item. We're not talking about new position here. We're talking about elevating 1 lieutenant on each company. And it'd be a promotional test standard HR function. And the cost of what that would be is under $30,000. And we're looking for 1 inspector in the fire marshal's office. I talked before about the mandates and what's required within that office. And they do a lot. And, I was talking with our fire marshal today, and, we want to get the mandated inspections done. They're able to get through get plan reviews completed, which helps new construction. It helps development. It's an economic development function. They're also involved in public education. Our community risk reduction is on the rise, and we want to continue to do so. High-level inspections, sometimes you need more than 1 inspector there for a larger facility. Fire watch duties, and, larger fires require multiple investigators, and as long as they're state-trained, certified fire marshals, they would be able to assist with those investigations. Even though their rank is inspector, they'd be able to help out and support the overall mission of the fire marshal office. So like I said, we presented to the mayor, discussed the priorities, but then he also discussed the priorities of the budget. And so we came back with a modified request. Modified request is what you see before you: 3 new firefighters, 3 EMS lieutenants. That's what I proposed. That's what I would support. And the mayor has proposed 1 new EMS lieutenant out of that. So I have some slides that detail our current response configuration. I'll go through them. I think especially for those, you have the presentation, but especially for those maybe at home, maybe seeing this for the first time, I think it does help them kind of highlight, that we do have that one battalion chief. We have 3 engines that have paramedics on them. We have 1 truck that is not designed to run that paramedic ALS service. We have 2 ambulances that are staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And we have 1 ambulance staffed 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And even with the 3rd, we still see hunters comes into town. We still see occasionally, even deeper than that, even than that 1 hunters. Our ancillary staffing, we have a chief, myself, we have 2 deputies. Right now, we're hiring our 2nd deputy chief. We have the executive secretary, and she's great. She oversees a lot of this. Our senior clerk, we have a part-time clerk, and like I said, we have, our EMS officer position is designed to be staffed 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. In the fire marshal's office, we have the fire marshal, the 2 deputies, and we have a senior clerk there as well. So what I desired was a different alignment, and you can see it on the slide. I think it speaks for itself. I've already spoken to it, so I don't want to continue to go over it, but I'll go through each slide and how we reduced the ancillary or daytime staffing, and we increased the responder staffing. I think that was important to continue. Then we have what ultimately went through as the requested staffing, which would incorporate the 3 new firefighters and the 3 EMS officers, and then the requested ancillary staffing, which again reduced that EMS officer. And then this is the proposal you have before you, which includes the 1 EMS officer being added, and that would have a start date of January 1, 26. And then that ancillary staffing, again, reduced by 1 because the EMS officers come off the day shift. This slide, I think, is important to note a few things. All right, there's a lot going on in this slide. I don't know how far away it is for everyone and how small that print is. But I'll tell you that it talks about a couple metrics that you don't often see when you're talking about departments. And it is breaking the department down to cost per incident and cost per capita. And we obviously look to departments in our general area, but more important than that, Branford, Guilford, and Milford all have ALS transport, like we do. And I think they're the most relevant comparables. Branford recently started, they actually pretty much copied our current model of EMTs on an ambulance, and the medic comes over from the engine, and if there's an ALS transport needed, they'll ride in. If you look at the cost per incident, we're right on par there with Branford. Everybody else is hundreds of dollars more in terms of what that town is spending for the number of incidents they respond to. I think the cost per capita is even more striking. And I want to talk about the methodology here. This is a net cost. What's been done here is, because the capital needs in every department is different, I did not include capital. And I backed out or gave you a net number after revenue. So what is the true cost to the taxpayer? And I think that tells it there. And so that net cost per capita is far lower in Wallingford. So the average taxpayer in Wallingford is paying less for their fire and emergency services, and they're getting more. And then just one last thing about vehicles, and I do give credit for everyone with the support of the vehicles. We are in good shape with what's coming. We have 2 ambulances in production that will be arriving within the next 12 months. We have our engine 2 replacement is built and is being modified, ready to respond soon and go on the road hopefully by June. Engine 1 is a late 2026 delivery. Truck 1 is a 2027 delivery, and Engine 3, the Quint, which you funded last year, that's a 2028 delivery. I'm hoping Squad 8 can be ordered with this successful capital project. And we are forecasting out a new ambulance to be added in 2 years. And we're going to need fire marshal vehicles. Two of our fire marshal vehicles are quite older. And we have a truck one refurbishment plan that you'll hear more about in the future. But that concludes the presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Chief. Questions from the council? Mr. Testa?
Chief?
Good evening.
Chief? Thank you so much. There's a lot of questions, but just so that I could understand all this tremendous information you've given us. But you know, you got me looking at this, the cost comparison by town, and I hadn't spent any real time looking that over when you sent it to us, other than the last column. But what I wish I had time to do is the number of incidents per capita. Because there's all these interesting columns and calculations, but I was trying to find what town might be most like us overall, you know, and if I looked at it as, you know, on the peripheral, Milford, Brantford, Guilford, North Haven maybe, but then you look at the numbers. But I was looking at Brantford, and there wasn't a big difference in the budget, maybe 500,000, but say they had 7,000, I'm rounding up, 7,000 incidents with 28,000 people. We got 7,800 incidents with 44,000 people. Doesn't it even matter? It looks to me, though, looking at this, that we have more incidents per capita than a lot of towns that you would think would be similar to ours. Does that make any sense? Is that an accurate observation, or am I off the reservation here?
It absolutely does. So let's take, for example, Meriden. Meriden, as we know, is quite larger. My friend Chief Schott knows it well, and there's a lot greater population density in Meriden. Meriden also does not respond at a ALS level, and they're really more of a first responder EMS agency. So the number and types of calls they would respond to are far fewer. Those additional calls would be handled by private ambulance. So again, when I said we're doing more, because it's our department is all encompassing. We're capturing all of those calls.
Then I was looking at Milford. You gave us the slide. But I mean, their cost per incident is, you know, $600,000 more than ours. Out of $100,000, $1 million. Wait, let me get this right. $600, $700 out of it. But that's a big amount. It's a big difference. And I look at their budget. Their population is more than ours. The incidents are less than ours. Again, it might be a function of what they do, what they don't do. Their budget is almost $400,000, $4 million more than ours, which to me accounts greatly for that cost per incident. They're paying a lot more for their service. Are they paying that much more in salaries to account for that? Do they have that many more people? Because that seems like an odd.
So it's a combination. It's a combination of things.
Yeah.
And I know that area well. And I hesitated whether to include Milford in this because I really wanted to stick with area departments. But again, because they do provide a type of service that we do, I wanted to include them. But I know the area well, and you're getting, in Milford, you're getting close to the Gold Coast down there. So there is a lot of bleed over. So it's not an apples to apples comparison. I'll be the first to admit that. On the other hand, and again, I know Milford well, they're very top heavy. They have a lot of staff that aren't even necessarily on the road every day responding to incidents. So I think it really illustrates how lean we are.
That's kind of what I was drawing from this, and I just realized you were right next door.
That's right.
So I'm sure you know them very well. And I only looked at them because over the years, we've tended to compare ourselves with Milford on the educational side a lot too. So it seems like we're very similar in a lot of ways. So, but what you said, makes sense to me. I don't want to waste any more time on that. I want to just get a better understanding of the personnel situation, just so I understand more. To me, if I see you're going to add a lieutenant, in my simple way of looking at it, I assume it's coming from within. So then you're going to replace that with another firefighter.
That would result in a
That
new
would
firefighter
seem the
hire.
simplest thing, right?
That's correct.
So if I see 3 new firefighters and what appears to be 2.5 lieutenants, I think, okay, wait a minute. If we gave you the money for the lieutenants at the money you were talking about, you asked for 3, there's 2.5, it's like $200,000. Again, it's all rounding off. But then there's 3 new firefighters at $190,000. Are those 3 new firefighters to replace the lieutenants, or those 3 new firefighters, and who's replacing the lieutenants?
Right, so 2 things would happen.
Yeah.
So if my proposal had been funded.
Right.
So what would happen is we would hold a promotional test, and those 3 members in the new positions would elevate up. And typically those would be some of our, more tenured, higher salaried firefighters.
Right.
So you'd be, for them, you'd be paying that gap between what they're currently earning to lieutenant.
Right.
And then we'd be hiring 3 new firefighters to replace them, plus the 3 new firefighters I've asked for. So we would need 6 firefighters would be the new hire. So new into the department would be 6 brand new first step firefighters.
Okay, that's what I was trying to,
Yes.
because to me, you elevate 3 people, and the actual salary line cost should be the differential.
Correct.
So you're, okay, so with what you were approved for the lieutenants, you are going to be able to replace them, but the other 3 that were not approved, those were 3 more.
Correct.
Correct?
So, right, correct. So for the,
Okay.
and to be clear, it's 1 EMS lieutenant, 1 additional. So, and when that promotion happens, then we would certainly need to replace that individual that promoted. So that would be a new firefighter.
Right. I was just trying to, I'm looking at the salary line differential. It's various places, but it looks like it's going to be, in the mayor's budget, it's about $400,000 difference. All right. What I've been trying to, we all know that this budget is a bear. All right? Everybody's talking like, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? It doesn't appear to me that there's a lot of increase expense for personnel in your budget. As it is, you're not getting what you wanted. And if we were looking to make further cuts anywhere, we would be saying you can't hire this, or you can't keep this, which I would be loath to do. So the only way I can try to find ways to make reasonable adjustments in this budget across the board, town-wide, is with capital expenditures. And without cutting people. So, and you're the first department I've really been able to talk to about this. I know I've shared with my colleagues and others at times that I'd love to see us try to do more bonding. And I know that carries with it challenges, but I'm trying to look at each department and say, okay, from a capital expenditure point of view, what could we potentially pull out of the operating budget and put into a bonding ordinance? So you still get what you want, but we're not paying for it with the annual tax revenues and so forth. So, and I know I'm taking up a lot of time, but so be it. Your capital budget line, this is what struck me. It was a big jump from 2024, just what you asked for. right? About $530,000, let's say, over this year. And then the mayor approved some of that with about $140,000 difference. But some of it's listed here, but can you just give me a brief, what was that? What was that $500,000?
So I'll tackle the
I know there's
first
a
part of
vehicle.
what you said first.
Yeah.
Relative to the increase over last year.
Yeah,
So as you can appreciate, and I know you were all on the council, the ARPA funding opportunities were there for various departments, and the fire department certainly benefited from the ARPA funding. That enabled projects that were earmarked to show up on the capital side to be funded through ARPA, which the department appreciates. And every person sitting behind you is appreciative of those expenditures. Unfortunately, they don't stop or end. So to answer your second question, the one probably that would closest align with a bonding project or combined source would be the Squad 8 replacement. And we certainly don't want to see that go away, but that could be an alternative funding source, just like the ARPA was an alternative funding source. Obviously, the big difference was the ARPA was federal dollars that didn't come from our taxpayers.
can you refresh me on what was spent in 2024 from that source?
Yeah, well,
So it wouldn't appear on the,
Probably the largest one was the Quint that we referred to in the slide. I talked about 2028. That's over a 1.4 million expenditure that was paid for the Quint. There were others, but that is the largest. Yeah. And keep in mind, the department historically has utilized, and my predecessors utilized, a very astute way of funding capital, which was splitting the apparatus purchases over multiple years.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure you're familiar with that. You've been on the council a long time.
Yes.
That's actually a really good way to do it because it does normalize the costs so they're not big spikes.
where are you with, can't believe I have to say this, but it's the only thing that just clicked in my head, fire trucks. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Apparatus that, engines, ladders, so on. You're asking for the CMS, that vehicle. How are you on everything else?
So the vehicle.
We did okay with that ARPA
Yeah, our
money.
vehicle replacement plan right now is looking good. Next year, if Squad 8 is funded this year, you will likely see a similar request for Rescue 7 replacement in the near future, as well as vehicles for the fire marshals.
And that vehicle that is in the budget, that what you would call an engine?
Yeah, so it's really more of a flex vehicle. This proposal came from Chief Salata as a large, think like a 550 style pickup that has multiple uses and can be deployed in multiple ways.
Oh, so it's not.
It's not a traditional apparatus.
Okay.
It does replace the old Squad 8, which was so old it was salvaged off not too long ago. Yeah.
Okay.
And they're responding right now out of an older SUV. This would be a far better response vehicle. What they're currently in is not sufficient for their needs. They are, again, doing more with less.
All right, I've taken up a lot of time, and you've been really helpful. I really appreciate the information and the indulgence from everyone else, so I'm okay at this point. Thank you very much. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chief, thank you, first of all, for supplying your PowerPoint prior to the meeting, because it gave me an opportunity to see it and to look at some of this stuff. The combi tool, it's a $20,000 expenditure. Is that, I know when I went up to Central Fire Headquarters and, it was graciously allowed to train for one evening, at the end, we sort of got together in a circle. We were looking at the machinery that's there, and something that was pointed out to me was the extrication thing that seems to be tethered to the vehicle, and there was a sort of request that it not be tethered to the vehicle so that you could, go further. And is that what this is?
It is. So I'll use some jargon.
Yeah,
I try to avoid it, but hydraulics is what we use, and it's battery-operated hydraulic tools. And so the combi tool is kind of the compromise of a tool, if you will. And it compromises in a couple ways. So it combines the features of a spreader, often called the jaws of life, with a cutter, which is able to cut the pillars of each vehicle if you need to do certain extrication. And it can cut other things as well. So now that combi tool can do both. But like a lot of things that can do multiple things, it's not the best at any of them. But it gives you both features in one tool, so it's lower cost. And it also takes up a smaller amount of storage space. So this one would be targeted to ride in Engine 8 and be part of Company 8's deployment. It would be similar, we would certainly spec it out to be similar to what's on the career side, so that both our career firefighters and volunteer firefighters are utilizing the same advanced equipment, versus the hydraulic style, which used hydraulic hoses that supply the hydraulic fluid and is tethered to a power unit, to your example.
Okay, no, I appreciate that. I'm glad to see that, because that was definitely sought and spoken about that evening. You know, looking at the chart, Milford, while they have slightly less as far as incidents, they're at 7,550 and we're at 7,843. Our income is significantly more. It's $800,000 more, which is a good thing to see. And perhaps, as spoken, their expenses are higher. So, does Milford have volunteer?
They used to. If they do, it is basically an association at this point. It is not a response agency.
Okay. The only other thing I want to ask you about is, we have certain your department, my understanding is, has certain responsibilities when there is, let's say, a car fire on 91. And when your department, someone goes and does their job, my understanding is that the state reimburses, because it's a state highway, the state reimburses your department for those services. Is everything I said correct?
It's correct, but it's who they're reimbursing. And so that reimbursement goes to our volunteer agencies.
Okay. And my understanding is that in the governor's proposed budget, they cut that reimbursement. Right now, as this budget sits before us, how did you anticipate dealing with that, should that come to fruition?
It's going to be a far greater impact to those parts of our department that were receiving those funds directly. I know this is something the Joint Council is working on. I don't know if that, you would have far more knowledge of what's going on in Hartford.
I will tell you, I spoke to the governor face-to-face about this.
But the Joint Council being the Connecticut State Fire Association, the Connecticut Career Fire Chiefs, the UPFFA, they are all aligned on this issue, looking to see, funding not go away on that item.
No, and I don't want to see it to go away either, but I'm trying to figure, did you anticipate, for the purposes of this budget, because you talked about revenue, this budget reflecting no reimbursement, or crossing your fingers and putting the reimbursement in? I'm just trying to figure out, how does your budget reflect?
Yeah, it won't have a direct impact on our budget. Now, what is important to know is that none of the revenue is directly reflected to our budget. So none of our spending is based upon the revenue that comes in. So although I did list the revenue numbers for you, that is not something that is contingent upon our budget. When you saw my chart, that operating budget is the operating budget. It's not the budget less revenue.
Okay, so then please educate me. When you say the money goes to the volunteer firehouses, how is that reflected? I mean, what do they do with the money?
That's not reflected here.
Okay.
That's not part of this budget.
where do we reflect that? Do we know how much, like, annually we normally get from that?
Yeah, I don't have that number here. That would be more in the operating budgets within the association. So that's where that money would reflect.
Okay.
So it's not directly impacting this budget.
Yeah, I'm just trying to, any idea how much traditionally we have, our department, our town has seen from that reimbursement? I mean, is we talking 10,000, are we talking 50,000?
Yeah, I don't have that historical number.
I do not.
I can get you an answer for that.
Okay, that would be helpful.
That is an important number. I'll get you an answer for that.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Sure.
Thank you. Moving on to Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, I want to thank everybody who's here tonight because we don't usually see a lot of departments show up like this. And it's my understanding this was not per the chief's request. So I think you have a lot of support here, which is very nice to see. I have a lot of notes that are kind of all unrelated, so I'm sorry if this is a little bit scattered, but I want to just kind of go through some of the lines I highlighted and some notes I pulled out. One of the things, and I'm going to be asking the police department later also, your hiring and testing methods. Do you do that internally? Are you on apps that go out wider? And are you okay with the way we're doing that currently?
Right, so that's an HR function. We deal with them. We advise them of what our needs are in terms of openings or anticipated vacancies. And this happened before I got here. They've been very receptive to some of those new methods that you've talked about, including the firefighter app. That's a big one, the firefighter, because you catch a lot of individuals that are looking for fire department jobs. But I think it's bigger than that. We really want to encourage the internal growth from within our department. So if there's somebody that's either in our EMS division or that's one of our volunteer firefighters that would like that opportunity for career, they do get an opportunity to move within the department as well.
Great, thank you. Another thing, and this may come up again with police also. This is not a knock at the police department at all, chiefs, but I was just comparing police and fire pay. Our police department seems like they're doing much better than our fire department. And I kind of was looking up if that's normal or not. And it seems to me, and this might not even be a budgetary question for this year, but our fire department pay seems like it's on the lower end. So our fire lieutenants are making about 88,000. Our police lieutenants are making 103. So I think there's a disparity there, and I'm not arguing that our police should be making less. I may be arguing that our fire should be making more. So again, this isn't necessarily a question for you right now, but I think it's just something we all might want to just keep in mind and maybe take a look at those salaries moving forward. The budget as a whole. So if I look at your bottom line, the fire department budget has been mainly flat, it looks like, for a few years. Now, I know we did have some ARPA expenditures that came out, so that might have been the cause of some of that. But it's very rare to look and see the bottom line. So I'm looking at page 37 of the budget. The grand total column, it's very rare, if I've ever seen it in any other department, where you look at the fiscal year ended 2024, and it's basically the same as the proposal this year. We don't see that a lot. So I just wanted to point that out. I don't have a question on it. I just think it was interesting, just an interesting fact that the council might want to take a look at. While you have the budget up there, I'll just run through my notes in here, and then I'll go back to the other stuff. The line 54315, maintenance of buildings and grounds. So that's at 95,000 this year. But I know that a lot of the department does some of their own maintenance, lawn mowing, possibly snow removal. I don't know if you can quantify how much that's saving. I know that's a hard thing to ask, but that's the only department I'm aware of that does anything like that. So I'm just trying to, in your opinion, would that line be a lot higher if that didn't happen?
Well, I'll address one part of that first,
Sure.
and that is our members take a lot of pride in the stations. Because of the nature of our shifts, our members, they're not coming to work in one office for 8 hours. They're there for many hours, and They take a lot of pride in the upkeep and maintenance of the grounds and where they are working out of. That line item 54315 is really more for a lot of the think larger scale. So not like the day-to-day like landscaping and things like that, but for the actual repairs. Something is broken, we need to call in a plumber. We recently had a pretty significant sewage leak that the mayor was assisting me with late on a Friday night. There's a lot that goes into maintaining our buildings, both expected and we can forecast, and the unexpected. So those costs, we are seeing increases. I will mention one thing. Our fire marshal does a very thorough job. Our whole fire marshal's office does. And each one of our buildings got a report of items that need to be addressed. So that's part of what you're seeing here, are increased costs.
All right. Yeah, we have a few of those booklets to look at after the budget. The telephone line. So this is something I'm going to be asking across the board. I'm not really sure why, but the telephone line in a lot of departments to me seems excessive. So your telephone line is $45,500 for the year. Do you know what goes into that? Or that doesn't include dispatch because that's in the police budget, I'm assuming. So is this just actual telephones that's $45,000?
Yeah, this is maintaining all of that infrastructure as well as station to station communications.
Okay. Is that something you would want to look at? Is that a system that
we're always looking at ways we can modernize and improve those costs?
And like I said, I'm going to be asking other departments about that too, because it seems across the board that just seems a little bit high. So line 55970, vehicle and property insurance deductible. I don't have a question about the figure. I just have a question of why that was not in prior budgets. I mean, it's in the current budget, but it wasn't in the 2024. And I know that predates you, but I'm just not sure why it was zero and now it's on you. If maybe that was paid by another department in the past.
That might be a better question for our comptroller.
Actually, that would be a question for the risk manager.
Risk manager, all right, I will, give Kurt a call tomorrow. The Squad 8 replacement, it's on page 36. So $350,000 was requested, and the mayor approved $250,000. Is that getting them what they need or what they're looking for? Or I don't want to pay $250,000 and then we get something that's not useful for what they're asking.
I can tell you this, what won't change is the platform of the vehicle. So there will be opportunities to increase its capabilities over time. If we're able to fund $250,000, we will certainly build a very proper, flexible response vehicle that our members will be able to utilize and appreciate. Certainly appreciate a lot more than the vehicle they're in.
All right. All right, this might be anecdotal, but it's something I've heard. I just want to verify if it's true, if you don't mind. Is it true that we have the same staffing as 2012, but double the call volume?
If we were looking simply at fire rescue, in terms of minimum staffing, that is accurate. We have added the EMTs, which increased that number.
Okay.
So previously that number would have included that emergency medical response.
Okay. Bear with me as I flip through. I have a note on here, but I don't know if I want to open this can of worms, but maybe I will because you brought it up on a slide. Squad 2. It's still not, I think you had it classified as, what was the term you used?
Pre-delivery.
Pre-delivery, correct. It's been here for about 6 months?
Yeah, it arrived not to the specification.
Yes.
So that has been a situation we've dealt with the manufacturer. There was a change to the way the hose can be configured. It was a hose configuration issue. And
It didn't fit enough hose, that was the issue?
Right. So we want to make sure there's adequate supply line, especially considering Wallingford has multiple areas that are not covered by municipal water. So we're confident in the apparatus as it's being reconfigured and will be delivered where we accept delivery in the coming weeks or maybe a month.
Is there a possibility that we could sell that as is or return it to the manufacturer and just restart the process over?
Could we? Certainly, there's an entity that would purchase the apparatus. I don't think that would move us forward. I believe that would then create a situation where I'm coming back to you and saying, well, now we need to replace engine 2 all over again. You did see the slide where I talked about how long some of those deliveries are scheduled for. Those are projects already completed and signed for and paid for. Starting over, if we were to do that and starting over with a new apparatus, we'd be many years out before delivery, and we'd be at higher cost. Costs have increased. So it would be a net loss to the town in terms of costs, in terms of what that apparatus provided for us. It's possible we would end up with something better, but if we had to cut costs so much to stay within that budget, it's likely we wouldn't. So that's the situation we're in. I'm confident we're going to get an apparatus that will meet the needs of the citizens of Wallingford and that our responders are going to be happy to be riding on.
Okay, great. I just wanted to bring that up because I know we had all questioned that when we had a couple of the additional funding requests for it. And from my opinion, if I want you to have something that is what is the most useful. So, I mean, I'm open to it. If there's anything you want to ask us for or present to us, I'm sure some of the other counselors might be as well. We talked a little bit about revenue. So the ambulance revenue, that goes into the general fund. So the fire department doesn't see that revenue. It gets dumped into the general fund, but it looks like this year it's budgeted to bring in $2.5 million. And then you said because we have Medic 3, that might actually be more than 2.5 million. Are you able to kind of look at how long Medic 3 has already been in and see how much more you think that might be in revenue?
Sure, I can walk you through that a little bit. So I do have our revenue figures. And when you look at year over year, they've been on an increase normally. And then when you add Medic 3, it has accelerated that pace. So, and it took some time because, the services you're providing in January, Medic 3 went on the road January 2nd. The services you're providing in January aren't accounts receivables that we're receiving the check for 6 weeks. There's a significant delay before you receive those bills. So if you look at our current billing and where it's trending, we are certainly up. And prior to Medic 3 going in service, so I'll take our 6-month number, we were at roughly 220,000 over what we billed last year at the same point in time in terms of receivables, what we actually received. And then now in the 3 months since, we've added another 100,000 to that. So we are seeing the weekly matchups with last week. I have it broken down by week. We're starting to now see those significant gains with that third ambulance on the road. So it is providing both a revenue source and better response to our citizens.
Absolutely, thank you. I don't know if this is a question for you or it might be for Mr. Hutt. I can call him tomorrow if so, but I know that the fire department went to their own health insurance plan. I believe it was a year or 2 years ago. Do we know how much money that saved the town as opposed to the plan they were formerly in? I've heard anywhere from 500,000 to 1.2 million, and I'm not sure if.
So I haven't studied any of those numbers.
Okay.
I've heard numbers, and I believe it's somewhere around $500,000 annually.
Okay.
But that is what I've heard that is not an informed opinion.
Okay, I understood. I'll give Mr. Hutt a call about that. Before you talked a lot about ALS and BLS, and I just want to make sure, in very basic terms, everyone knows what we're talking about. So ALS, advanced life support, that's paramedic level. BLS, basic life support, that's EMT level. You had mentioned RSI before. Would you mind just explaining what that is? Because I think I think what Wallingford offers is pretty advanced, and a lot of towns don't offer it. So I would love just for people to hear about that, if you don't mind.
So it's a good question, Counselor. So what I'll say is this: I have strengths and weaknesses. Emergency medical is not my strength. I would be doing a disservice to all the good work that went into that program by trying to give you the layman's explanation right now. It has to do with, it's an advanced airway activity, but I don't want to do it a disservice.
All right, guys, but suffice it to say, we offer an advanced life support level of care that other municipalities do not offer.
There are many that are not offering that service. That's correct.
Okay. In our paramedics, that's another thing with our budget that I, again, probably is not for tonight, but I think just as a town looking forward, we want that level of care. I mean, I know I certainly want that for the town. Our paramedics are not a line item broken out in our budget. It's what I would consider a small bonus for that level and the level of care that they provide and the expertise and schooling they go through for that is huge. And I mean, to me, I feel like the paramedics are working two jobs. So they're working the fire side and they're working these advanced life support calls. So I think we might want to just look at that with salaries in the coming years. Just we want to maintain that. So staffing, that was a big part of this budget. There was an incident on Saturday morning. I don't know if you're comfortable discussing that, but I think it shows kind of what happens, what resources are required to go, and when the resources are not there. So we talk about the engines have two firefighter EMTs and a paramedic, firefighter paramedic. And then when we lose that paramedic to an ALS call, now that engine's down to two. I believe that call that we did not have a paramedic in town. Would you be comfortable talking about that and who needed to respond and what happened with that?
You're referring to the head-on collision in motor vehicle accident?
Correct.
On Saturday? Yeah, so I was when that call came in, I was in contact with CAR 4, our incident commander, just about that, because I was concerned about the details of the call and how severe the accident could be. That is an incident where we required multiple ALS transports due to the nature of the car accident. Obviously, because of HIPAA, I can't really get into anything specific.
Sure.
But I can tell you that one ALS provider was on scene and able to partner with the ambulance crew to provide a full ALS transport team. The other ambulance was a Hunter's BLS crew, and because we did not have another paramedic on scene, it required Engine 3 to be called to the scene with their paramedic. So it was an in-town, on-duty paramedic to intercept with the ambulance crew to now provide that team. So the team was provided. It's just how that comes together. So your awareness of our operations is such that you recognize that was a difficult incident. It required multiple pieces to come together to handle that incident.
Sure, and I think just as a whole, that shows where it's one incident, but the amount of resources it requires. So you get another incident at the same time, or, I mean, we basically, if we have 3 ALS calls at the same time, we have no more paramedics left.
That is correct.
So it's the amount of resources required for even one call kind of brings us down to a level where, if one more thing happens, in my opinion, we're kind of in a tough situation there.
So if you recall earlier in my presentation, I talked about mutual aid and I talked about very stressed departments, especially during the day. And this is a good highlight on that point because that is true. We are handling simultaneous calls, and you have limited resources, and including mutual aid. Mutual aid you call, but sometimes our typical mutual aid partners are not there and available to respond at that moment. So you have to go a little further to get that mutual aid. That is the nature of emergency response. I think you might have also heard me say earlier, we can't staff for every possibility.
Yeah.
That's just, no department does that. But we do have to look at probabilities, and increasing our staffing incrementally is the direction we're looking to go in.
Okay, thank you. The 4 gas meters, those were removed from your budget for the mayor. That one baffled me because correct me if I'm wrong, but one of the things a 4 gas meter tells you is if an environment you're going into is going to explode or not, correct? So I wouldn't think that would be something we'd want to cut.
So we have meters. We have a significant inventory of meters.
Okay.
I've worked very closely with our team that is seeking this, and I told you earlier in the process, these capital requests came from the individuals before you. They're very passionate about the department and about making it the best it can be. So I had a discussion about those meters, and while some of them are nearing end of service life, they are not at end of service life.
Okay.
In addition to that, and maybe even more relevant, is that in my past history, I've worked with meter companies where there's a leasing model. So I'm not a leasing fan of anything.
Mm-hmm.
Meters are a great example where leasing actually works, and I'm going to tell you why. Meters become obsolete, requiring replacement. They near end of service life, where the manufacturers tell us, no, you can't get any parts for that anymore. We won't repair those anymore. And they also get banged up. In a leasing model, if you have that unit not working, they next day you the replacement, and then that one goes back. And so there's a lot to like about it. I'm evaluating that right now.
Okay.
I don't know that that's the direction we're going to go in, but I do know that spending the money to buy more units when we're considering a leasing model would not be the best use of taxpayer funds.
Okay.
So when that was cut, it was the mayor cutting it through a discussion we had where let's put that one on hold because I have another idea for how we can fund that.
Okay. The ones we currently have, those are safe. They'll last us through this budget year if that reduction.
Yes, they're not at end
Okay.
of service life.
Okay.
And we, we're going to keep those units along.
Okay. Wonderful. I just want to make sure
Yes.
we still had working ones. All right. This is a tough one. This is the one that really, I don't know. I try not to get fired up about this stuff, but this one bothered me. The mattresses. So you requested $9,300 for new mattresses. I think it was 22 mattresses. And the condition on the budget request, the firefighter who requested it used a word that I have never seen on a budget request before. The condition was noted as deplorable, and that was denied.
Well, I'll be speaking with that firefighter. No, I'm just kidding.
He's a good guy. No.
Here's the situation. Because we were facing some difficult cuts, we really focused on those things that made us operationally stronger. And that's what you see that survived in terms of the capital. And regrettably, I would say that we value all of our members, and we want to make sure that station furniture needs are met and those replacements are made, and we'll be looking to do that as soon as possible. But it was not moved forward in this budget with the constraints that were provided.
Okay, that's unfortunate. I mean, I'm hoping we can come up with something to get that funded. There were offices in the current budget that got much more than that for new furniture in this current budget for one office. So to me, the fact that that would be spread out over 22 items, that one, we're gonna try to get that one put back in. I think that's all my questions. I just had a few more comments as I went through this. To me, I feel that this is this is underfunded. And I'm very hard on the budget. I think you all know that. I'm maybe one of the hardest ones on the budget every year. I'm always looking to see where we can save. I think this goes too far. You know, all the people in this room, they signed up when they took this job to put their lives on the line to protect us. And I think it's on us to make sure that they have all the tools and the resources to go home to their families. And I don't know that this budget is giving them that, and that worries me. You know, you can look up, there's plenty of podcasts and interviews out there of departments that were understaffed, where terrible things have happened, and you look back and I mean, even recently, like the California fires, and you look back and you say, how did this happen? How could that ever happen? And then it's, you know, you start peeling back the layers, and it's, oh, well, we were underfunded, or we asked for this and we didn't get it, or we needed more staffing. And God forbid a tragedy ever happens. You know, it's too late. And I don't want that on us. I don't want that for our residents. I don't want that for our firefighters. I think, in my opinion, with this current staffing that we have, without the additional resources, with the staffing kind of being stagnant for all these years, with a call volume multiplying, we are relying on hope. And hope is not a strategy. Hope isn't a tactic. I don't ever want to get that call that someone didn't make it home because our priorities were so out of line that we decided that many other departments should get the same funding or additional funding, but this is where we chose to cut. That might just be what my priorities are, but I think if the government does nothing else, public safety is the only thing that we really owe the community. A few things come close behind, but if we don't have a safe town, what are we doing? This is basic government. We've been told that we need additional staffing. We haven't come anywhere close to giving them what they've asked for. So going forward, I just hope that the council, I'll certainly be presenting some ideas to everybody, and I hope everyone else just looks at this too, and we can try to figure this out. Thank you, Chiefs. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you. On to Councilor Regan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Chief. So two general areas of questions for me. Unfortunately, both of them are related to revenue. And I do totally get that's not your primary job, and you know, but it is part of the equation. We have 2.4 million in projected revenue. Do you have an idea of what share that is for our town provided services? Do we cover 50% of the calls? Do you have even have a way to quantify that?
Our revenue is for our services provided. Is that what you're asking?
Right, but
in terms
when
of this revenue projection.
Hunters comes in, for instance, do you know? I mean, are we responding to 50% of those ambulance calls? Yeah,
so we do a lot of. There's a lot of interaction with hunters and with their billing staff. We do our billing through CompStar, but this is a net revenue number that's coming into the town of Wallingford.
Do we have an idea if we're breaking even with that, or is it a profit center, for instance?
When you say breaking even, you mean in terms of the costs of spinning out the
Exactly.
ALS costs? So it wouldn't be as simple as just taking, for instance, you know, the EMT salaries, because there's, you know, a lot of equipment that's purchased. We have the apparatus they're in, but it's more so than that, because we are also providing emergency care through our engine companies. And so now you have our ALS provider coming from the engine over. So to be able to draw a line and say this portion was relative to the EMS billing that rolls into that, you know, 2.5 or greater number is that is a complex answer to come to.
Okay.
But we can certainly look to. I would certainly look to provide you more context and more information on that.
Great.
But I think at some point in time we would be.
We can talk about the enterprise. Mr. Chairman?
We did operate the ambulance as an enterprise for a better part of the last decade. And what we found was that it was not operating in a self-sustaining method. So we then repealed the ordinance that allowed the ambulance to operate as an enterprise. So we as a town have explored that. We tried it for several years, and it was not an enterprise that sustained itself.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Second part of the question regarding grants. Do we know, and do you know from your previous life, what that addressable grant market is? Do you have a wish list, for instance, that if we're suddenly, and let's say they're unencumbered funds, so they're not tied to headcount or not tied to apparatus, if we received the grant for $100,000, would you then be looking to add headcount or apparatus or a combination of both?
So it's a great question. So the three primary grants through FEMA for municipal fire departments are assistance to firefighter grants, AFG, which is often used for equipment or apparatus. SAFER, which is a staffing grant, which works on a graduated scale to bring that additional personnel in through a SAFER grant. It starts with 100% of the cost of the personnel, and it graduates over the 4 years, and then ultimately the town pays the full cost of the personnel. And then there's fire protection grants. So those are grants that would be helpful for our community risk reduction and public education activities. So those three types of grants, they each have a funding priority that comes in the notice of funding opportunity, and it will tell you what, within that document, it will tell you what items are priority funded items as high, medium, or low. If the item you're seeking a grant for is either low or medium, you should not take the time to put the grant together. There are so many high priority items that do not get funded because it is a competitive grant, and it's really the sole grant for fire departments. And it is an area we are certainly, as I mentioned in my slide, we're going to be evaluating those funding opportunities. I'm certainly enthusiastic to put our best foot forward and seek grants that can help us when it's for things that will benefit us, and they are high priority items.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Let me preface my comments by saying that this is probably an unprecedented conversation for this council in terms of like the needs and the desire of the fire department. And I think that's kudos to you, and I also think that's kudos to the mayor for having such a frank conversation as far as what our potential needs could be for the future. So I really appreciate this discussion and the frankness of this discussion. So one of the things you brought up earlier was the difficulty in getting fire apparatus over the railroad tracks at different times. We have 2 closed firehouses on the west side of town. I know one has been repurposed to something else. Is there any consideration to potentially reopening a firehouse?
It is something we're looking at. Mr. Beltramitis is in the room. We've discussed one of those buildings because it's one that Public Works has been utilizing. Just know that there's a lot that would go into that. Obviously, the building would need to be refurbished to be utilized, but I won't have our members working out of a substandard, building that needs refurbishment. So then now we look at, okay, so there's building costs. Well, what is operating out of there? What is responding from there? And we've had those talks. I think it's important that you look at every possibility. And it is a town-owned property. It's a required property. You're referring to the Cook Hill former Station 4.
Yes.
Right. It's a required property to maintain in the town inventory because of the radio communications equipment. It's in a somewhat beneficial location in that it is on the west side of town. It is near where a high percentage of our medical calls between Masonic, Ashlar, and Gaylord, that's a large chunk of our medical calls. So having, maybe another EMS asset responding out of there, not a bad location for that. know that it's not free. Even though it's our building, it wouldn't be free. There would be costs associated with that. But these are conversations we've had, and they're avenues we will continue to explore.
All right, thank you. When we talk about cost per incident or cost per capita, it's an interesting discussion to have because we're on the low end of both, right? Especially relative to departments that are towns that are sort of equal size. So that could be, we're doing a better job than sort of we're beating the other towns in terms of our efficacy, or it could be that we have understaffed or underfunded. Our fire department could be the flip side of that, right? So, I think with some of the conversations we had before, I was sort of under the impression that we were, somewhat understaffed, and I think that's sort of what your request, I think, is sort of reflective of that. I'm hoping that the fire department study will help to give us some guidance, with the staffing and maybe some of the pay conversation and all that. So not really a question as much as, I get concerned when I see us as like the lowest cost provider of any service, right? Because it's like, what are we doing differently, or how did we do this so much cheaper than everyone else? And it's not so much cheaper, but like per capita, we're like $10 or $20 cheaper than the next lowest town on the list. So, it's sort of an area of concern of mine. So, so that's that. Anyone else on the council? Questions on the fire department? Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just the ambulance and the enterprise fund. I do agree that we did try that. I am certainly open to trying it again. Part of the problem with the prior scheme is the prior administration was not, in my opinion, gung-ho about collecting the bills. I think the prior administration saw it as a service, a worthy service, but I know that had been an issue, and also the rates. We have the ability to petition the state because we are a municipal ambulance service on the rates because of the expenses that we have to go through. So, I have no problem with exploring that once again. I think, and the way the ordinance is it could run at, I think it was 10% negative on an annual basis, and that was understood, that if we had to seed some money from time to time, that was fine. But I wanted to ask you about, Councilor Tad asked you about some stuff that wasn't approved, and the candor. It's very rare, so to your credit, that a department comes to the council and says, hey, this is what I asked for, but this is where we ended up. Usually, we don't get that, so I very much appreciate that. This, the fitness equipment, there was a request of $4,500. I couldn't tell from the backup what specifically was looked for. Can you just tell us, like, what you have, what you're looking for, that kind of stuff?
Yeah, thank you. And just real quick before I go into the fitness equipment, I don't want to talk about the enterprise fund, but I do want to mention the billing rates. Not long after I got here, we had a lengthy meeting with the mayor and brought the billing rates up to market rate, which I think was the first time that had been done in a couple of years. So I give the mayor a lot of credit to ensure that was done. So as it relates to the fitness equipment, you can appreciate all our stations are a little bit different configuration, different amount of space they have, and they have a very different inventory of fitness equipment in them. I see needs for our firefighters, our EMTs, to be able to have that workout equipment on site and work in a good environment to be able to continue that health and wellness for our firefighters. The initial request that you see, there was a treadmill that needs to be replaced, there's a few other things, but I'm looking to standardize that equipment so that each station has appropriate equipment. With the one caveat that there is an opportunity to have more equipment in a couple of the stations because of the size of the fitness room. Central Fire Headquarters is a great example.
I appreciate that, and I'm certainly supportive of that. So, but thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone from the public on the fire department? Okay, and then moving on to the fire marshal. Any questions on the fire marshal budget? Anyone from the public? All right, thank you very much, Chief. Appreciate the candor.
Thank you all tonight. Appreciate it.
I assume that applause is for me, so I thank you very much. Yeah, no kidding. If you're gonna catch fire, now's the time, right? All right, and next we'll speak to the fire department, or the police department.
Can we come up?
Yes, please. Good evening. If you could introduce yourselves for the record, please.
Absolutely. Good evening to the council. John Ventura, Police Chief.
Good evening, Anthony DeMayo, Deputy Chief.
Good evening, Beth DeGallo, Executive Secretary.
All right, Chief, did you have something you wanted to start with?
Sure, so just an overview of our budget. Our document represents the police department's budget, and as outlined, it signifies a 7.1% increase over the current fiscal year's adjusted appropriations. So in accordance with your directive to pursue cuts where appropriate, our budget has been designed to continually provide police services in the manner we have consistently maintained while minimizing any increases. Our salary and wages segment shows a 5.6% increase over the current fiscal year 24-25 appropriation. Currently, the police union is due their contractual wage increases as stipulated by the terms of their collective bargaining agreement. Additionally, employees for both units have step increases included in this current 2025-2026 budget. The current staffing level for the Wallingford Police Department is 78 sworn officers. At present, we have 4 open police officer positions. The goal is to operate at full capacity with a total of 105 employees. We have extended 2 conditional offers of employment to entry-level police officer candidates, which we are currently doing backgrounds on, and we have multiple certified applicants from other agencies for employment. Additionally, we have an open dispatcher testing process, which we hope will yield viable candidates for employment. In breaking down the salary and wages into its components, I'm proposing a decrease of 25.8% in the adjusted fiscal 25-26 overtime line for police operations. The proposed operating and maintenance component of the budget shows a total increase of 2.2%. This increase is due to several rising costs associated with maintaining our new facility. As an agency, we have yet to experience all 4 seasons of use in the new building, and due to this uncertainty, several utility lines were increased. However, we've managed to keep overall building maintenance costs low as much of our operating equipment is still under warranty. The third segment of the proposed budget involves capital projects, which shows a 115.8% increase compared to its current adjusted budget for fiscal year 2024-2025. This rise reflects that multiple capital items for the last year's budget were financed by ARPA fundings, thereby lowering the overall capital figure for that fiscal year. This budget addresses 2 mission-critical items: body-worn camera and dashboard cameras and patrol vehicles. In compliance with the Police Accountability Bill, we must ensure that every marked police vehicle is equipped with a mobile dashboard recording system and that every officer is issued a body camera. The current platform that we are using is not being supported anymore. We're at our end of life for both units. Our existing system is no longer under warranty, and several cruiser cameras are using platforms for which we cannot obtain replacement parts should they fail. The body cameras are face similar conditions. The cameras that we use right now are 2019, 2020 technology, and they no longer will service those cameras. The batteries on those cameras no longer are charging to its appropriate levels, and in some conditions, they're actually exploding and separating, which we cannot get replacements for. We are obligated to provide these items for the state of Connecticut to our officers and to utilize the equipment. So we have met with several vendors, and the indicated dollar amount in the budget is reflective of what quotes we have received to replace the entire body-worn camera and dashboard camera platforms. We are also requesting 4 patrol vehicles to address aging cruisers in our fleet. It is essential to maintain a cruiser replacement schedule to ensure officers are operating vehicles that are safe. These vehicles serve as a mobile office for our officers, and we need to provide them with a safe and professional environment to work in. Just to go over our patrol fleet, we have 40 vehicles. So 14 are assigned to frontline patrol vehicles. Those will go out every single day to respond to calls. 2 are new and still in the process of being upfitted, which were purchased in 2024. We have 5 vehicles assigned to the traffic division, 4 vehicles assigned to the community impact unit, 3 vehicles assigned to the administration, 3 vehicles assigned to the detective division, 2 assigned to the records division, and 7 assigned to our backline extra duty cars. So these cars actually we've maintained and put out on the road for road jobs. So those cars, when you book a job for a road job, you're also paying for the cruiser. So the cruiser is generating $25 an hour in revenue every time it's out there. But the downside is the cruisers are never turned off, which creates immense problems as far as maintenance goes. So in one respect, you're gaining revenue by putting the cars out there, and the second issue that you have to deal with after that is that the cars are getting to the point where they can't be run anymore. Of the cruisers that we just mentioned, 7 are in excess of 100,000 actual odometer miles. 6 are in excess of 80,000 actual odometer miles, and the remainder in excess of 50,000 actual odometer miles, which do not include idle hours. So Deputy Chief did a formula for me. To estimate mileage based on idle hours, you can approximate idle hours as the equivalent to a certain number of miles. So Ford suggests that 1 hour of idling is roughly equal to 30 to 33 miles of driving. You can then add the estimated mileage to the actual mileage to get a more complete picture of the engine's usage. So for example, we have 6 2022 Ford Explorer SUVs. The average mileage of each car is 60,000 miles. The average idle hours is 8,000 hours apiece. Multiply by 31.5, and you have 278,000 estimated miles on those cars. The wear and tear on the vehicles also is so extreme that in 10 of those cases, the driver's seat materials and padding are worn down to the point where the metal framework is exposed. So we're in the process of addressing each of those cars. But as you can see, asking for cars is not just because we need shiny new cars out there that look nice. There's a purpose for them, and when you don't turn the cars off and that's your mobile office, there's not much option other than to replace them. So that's why we have those in the budget this time. But other than that, that's really all we're asking for in this budget, and we're open to any questions that you may have.
Questions for the police department? Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening.
Good evening.
Chief, you said you were asking for 4, but the backup shows 6.
So we originally asked for 6 cruisers, and then after speaking with the mayor, that he decided he would cut 2 cars so that the overall cars that we would get per his appropriated budget was 4.
So I know traditionally it has been 6 the ask has always been 6.
Correct.
What has been the trend here? Do you usually get 4 even though you asked for 6?
So we always ask for 6 because that is what would be optimal to keep the fleet maintenance going. Obviously constraints based on budget and monetary issues, we always see that 4. The years that we during COVID when they weren't producing cars and we couldn't get vehicles was detrimental to the entire agency, and a cut in the cars puts us back multiple years. It's not in this budget, if we say that we can't have cars, it's not like we could just go get them. There's, just like the fire department, it takes so long to procure a car, outfit it, stripe it, put all the necessary equipment into it. You're looking at, 1.5 years for a patrol car for a police department to put on the road. And then in the meantime, you're just, pumping money into these other cars to maintain them.
The body cam situation, that's important, right? That's just body cams not only help individuals, but they help officers get out of accusations.
Absolutely.
So, have you, or do you have the ability to, I would expect that there's other departments that have the same sort of cameras that are having the same sort of problem about doing something collectively with those groups? Have you?
So a lot of the groups, and I don't want to mention the name of the camera, but a lot of the groups that are using this particular camera all went to another brand of camera. Okay. And so we have 2 quotes. We have one from our current vendor, and then we have one from the other company, which we do have other products that we use through the agency unrelated to body cameras.
On the backup, it appears that the request was 181,860. The mayor increased that slightly. Is that based upon the quotes?
Correct, yes. So both companies quoted two different ways, one lump sum purchase and then costs covered over a 5-year period. So what you see there is what would be year one of a 5-year contract with a vendor.
Okay. Is there anything else that you asked for public safety that you did not get approved by the mayor?
So we did ask for 4 officers, which would bring us up to 82. My goal always, when I became chief, is to bring the agency up to around 85, which is optimal. And again, we spoke with the mayor and had a conversation, and there's just, based on where we were as a town, there's not something that we can do right now. So, we're going to try to hire to 78 and, see what we can do at that point.
I'm just trying to, where we are as a town is a difficult phrase when you're talking about public safety, right? So you
Very
have
difficult, yes.
where we are, we could have bank robberies every day, which thankfully we don't. But then budget-wise, you can't sustain. So I'm just concerned, as far as I know, there's been an increase in calls.
So I can share with you, and this is information directly from the Connecticut Division of Criminal Justice. So this report just came out, and you might have seen it already, but basically it breaks down each judicial district. So in the GA of New Haven, the new judicial district of New Haven, and we have Meriden as our GA 7, right? So we have our GA and then our judicial district. So, and as far as towns in our district, New Haven is first, obviously, with population growth, then Meriden, Hamden, then, we come in next. But as far as overall arrests, and this was something that even the prosecutors were, pretty, I don't say impressed, but, brought to our attention. So major arresting agencies in the New Haven Judicial District. So number 1 was New Haven with a 3-year total of 16,301 total arrests. Meriden was number 2 with 5,019 total arrests over a 3-year period, and we were number 3 with 3,699 arrests over a 3-year period. And then overall for the region to include, and that region includes, we're ahead of Hamden, East Haven, State Police, Troop I, Brantford, North Haven, Cheshire, Guilford, Troop G, North Brantford, Madison, Woodbridge, Yale, Troop A, the DPS, Department of Traffic, State Police, and DMV. So it's a pretty impressive number as far as what our activity is. And on top of that, as far as total warrants submitted to the judicial district, we are at 5. So New Haven, adult probation, Meriden, Hamden, and State are ahead of us, and that's it. So we've submitted, in a 4-year total, we've submitted 1,034 warrants for review.
And I appreciate that, and that's a good credit to the staff because that's arrests, right?
Correct.
So that's a complaint, identifiable perpetrator, and you link it up, right? But not every crime you're able to ascertain who did it, right? So we not only have a very high arrest rate, which is credit to the department, but we also have a high incident rate.
Correct.
So that's, for the benefit of public safety, do you think the 4 officers are necessary to maintain at least the status quo?
I do. When you look at how our agency is set up, our patrol division, which is the busiest, division in the department, it's your backbone of your agency. It is in any police department. Their deployment model has not changed in over 40 years. So that means, the midnight shift, the day shift, and the 4 to 12 shift our model has not changed. So on Monday, there's a 6-car plan for days, right? And that hasn't changed. On Monday, there's a 4-car plan for midnights. On Monday, there's a 6-car plan for 4 to 12. Now that carries on, and then, the weekend there's 1 more car and 1 more supervisor, but that model has not changed in almost 40 years. And extra officers allow you to do a lot of different things. It allows you to bring your minimums up. It also allows you to backfill special services, which we have not done in quite some time. Our traffic unit used to have 4 or 5 officers in there assigned strictly to traffic. Now, our traffic crashes keep rising every year, but our numbers in our traffic division are lessening. And we have 1 officer that is on the tail end of his career. He's almost 30 years, and he's, going to retire. So now I can't add to that because I can't pull from patrol to fill that. Our community impact unit, God bless them, they get every single complaint from everything, from roosters in people's yards to drugs to prostitution, but it's very hard to give them things because there's just not enough staffing in there. I mean, I have officers that volunteer to do this. So I have an officer that volunteers every Friday night. He goes down to New Haven and they do the Violent Crimes Task Force from 12 o'clock to 4 o'clock in the morning. And they work, but it's a credit to them because it's preventing crimes from coming into Wallingford, right? That's the reason why we're doing it, is to address the crimes before they come over the border. But, even the detective division, we've always historically had 2 shifts in the Bureau with multiple supervisors. Right now, we have 1 lieutenant, 1 sergeant, and five detectives, when you used to have shifts of detectives, and a narcotics unit.
And I guess that one officer is working so hard he hasn't had time to shave his beard, huh?
Oh, no, that officer works for the FBI.
All right, that's all I have. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening again. Back to the staffing. You said 85 officers is what you would consider optimal. That would still bring us below the current average for the state, correct?
Correct. And there is a formula that you can do, and depending on what you use, like perf and different subject matter experts will estimate you can do it's 1,000 to 22.1 as far as cops go. So I think we should be around 85 to 90 officers, and that even might be a little low.
Yeah, I was kind of just looking, I know I talked to you earlier today about this too, but I was kind of just looking up staffing levels and averages, and you gave me some good information too, but it seems like we're quite far below the averages for the state for similar towns, which is worrisome to me. Kind of same thing I was saying about fire department. To me, the public safety is our #1 priority, and so I want to make sure we have what we need in regards to that. How many patrol officers are on at any given time, or is it more at night or during the day? How does that work?
So the minimums are what we said. So the minimums are, right now, the minimum for 4 to 12 is 6 patrol vehicles on the road with 1 supervisor. So if, with our new schedule, it actually allowed us, to have more spaced out days off, and we can staff the shift. So there's 14, or the optimal is 12 to 14 officers assigned to each patrol shift. So if we can maintain that, you're going to look at, 7 to 8 cars going out there, barring vacation, sick time or comp time or something like that. So that's, if we can get 6 to 7 cars out there every single shift, that would be optimal for the administration to see, come out of the department to go address the town issues.
Okay, and then I assume when there's any sort of incident, multiple are responding, so then you're losing whatever.
Correct. So, you take a domestic violence incident, for example. So, you probably will have a supervisor show up to the scene, two officers, and that call can last 3 or 4 hours, depending on what happened there. There's a component that needs to be done as far as the suspect goes, and they go back to the station and they need to get processed, and there's forms that need to happen as far as their release, conditions of release, so they don't go back to the house. But then the officer, it's mandated through the state of Connecticut, so their domestic violence protocol is to stay with the victim, contact our domestic violence provider, maintain safety for the residents, have a safety plan established so that they can have it, if something were to happen, they know where to go, or if there's family members they can rely on. So that takes a long time. So you can take 2 cars off the road for multiple hours. DUI, same thing. So if you started out with 6 cars, when it gets busy, you might have 2 or 3 cars, and then officers are triaging themselves, and they're at Walmart taking a shoplifting, all right, I'm going to clear because I got a car accident up the street. I'll be back.
Even if you take that car accident you were speaking of earlier with the fire department, you got officers responding to the scene, then you're gonna have officers dedicated to blocking the road off, officers trying to manage the incident inside. You got officers that generally will go to the hospital with the victim because this was a potential fatality. Thankfully, it didn't work out that way. And then, reconstruction. We had to call officers in from home for that crash too, as well. So, yeah, we're utilizing a lot of resources for these events.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great example. I wasn't even thinking of your role in that, but yeah. So we're a big town population-wise and geographically, but geographically, if you have half of your cars in one incident,
Right.
That's a lot for the other ones to
And that's
cover,
why
it seems
it's,
like.
I wouldn't say it's offensive, but it bothers you when people say that it's quiet Wallingford, because it's not quiet Wallingford. Like, you don't know what happens in the town or what we address on a daily basis. You know, you know that, the town is safe, but you don't see what it takes to get to that point. So quiet Wallingford is bothersome sometimes when people say that.
Yeah, well, that's thanks to you. But yeah, you're right. It's luckily we don't see it, but you do, so you know what you need, which is why I would like to see us try to find a way to at least get you the 4 that you asked for, if it still doesn't get you up to the 85, but if we can, we'll look at that and see what we can do there. As far as hiring, are you using, again, same question I asked fire, but are you using relevant methods to recruit officers, to get officers? Are we doing internal tests? What's your
So it
take
gets
on
complicated with police hiring. So right now, and historically, we've always utilized the South Central Criminal Justice Association. So that's a New Haven County asset that does testing. So they do entry-level testing, certified testing, promotional testing. Go back 10 years and you're generating a list of potential applicants in the 50s, right? So you would get 50 applicants, you'd have a list, and you would know that, okay, all I have to do is take one test and I can backfill the agency. So now, you're getting 44 people for an entire year testing to be a police officer.
That's for the whole region.
Right, for the whole region.
That's not just for Wallingford.
So the current test that just came out, I believe there was 15 total applicants for the region, excluding New Haven PD. And we had 1/3 of that, so we had 3, or 1/5, we had 3. Of the 3, I don't know if I can use all 3. And what ends up unfortunately happening is that, we'll take a chance on somebody, or they'll get through the academy and realize that this is not the job for them. Or they don't make it off of FTO, and now we just, spent a year plus with this individual. Now it sets us back a year. Now we have to wait 4 months to get to the testing process again. So, it's extremely difficult because it's not by a lack of effort. We can fill these positions. Our detectives are ready to go, and we'll do backgrounds as fast as we ask them to do it. It's just we don't have the applicants there to do it, right? So there's other testing processes. The HR director wants to run his own Wallingford test, which I support. It just needs to generate people, right? In the meantime, we have to look to use other testing methods. So there's the Chiefs of Police Association that runs a test. That generates a lot of names. You also have to look at how we hire, and it's kind of an old model because certified officers were not something that was prevalent. You would get a couple officers that would go to different places, but now it's like the college NIL, right? So you play for UConn, year 1, but then you want to go somewhere else because they have better benefits. So they go year 2, they're going to another. Same thing with police. I might get hired by Guilford, but I live in Wallingford. I really wanted to work in Wallingford, but I didn't make the testing process at the time. So I'm going to use this opening now to go to Wallingford. But the way that it's established in the town, so if I have a certified application list and I have an entry-level list, I can't hire off of both at the same time. So I have to close one list out to get to this list to hire these people. But in the meantime, everyone on this list just went somewhere else.
And why is that?
Can't run 2 concurrent lists.
Can't run concurrent.
At the same time.
Because of?
That's the rules of the town right now. I don't know if it's driven by ordinance or charter, or I'm not really sure. But
I don't think it's charter, but.
You can't have 2 simultaneous processes going on at the same time. Because we have a couple guys sitting on the certified application list right now that we would want to look at, but we can't deal with them until we deal with the 2 entry levels through the South Central process, and we have to bring them to fruition first, close that list, and then we can go look at these other candidates.
So that's maybe a Mr. Hutt question? Okay.
And that's what really slows us down as far as being able to do things, because like I said, by the time you get to your candidate. So right now on just even the entry level list, everyone applies through a police app, which is, even the fire department uses some sort of version of that. But so the chiefs of police can live stream see who's applying to their agencies. Here comes an application, they're calling them up, come in right now. And they can, we've had people that didn't even apply to some other agencies calling them up saying, oh, I saw you passed the physical, you guys are good to go. You want an interview? So you don't have very much time before the test closes. You're told that you passed all your exams and you're eligible to, apply to different agencies and other agencies scooping up. You literally have a few days, and then that's it. They're gone.
So not only are we not getting the numbers, but we're maybe not getting to pick the best of the best because maybe they're getting.
Before you had,
even see them.
multiple cops seeking certified. So for certified, for example, you had multiple cops seeking very few positions. Now you have multiple cops seeking positions all over the state because every, municipality is low. So it really is a point where you can pick and choose where you want to go. And, for some people, it's, who comes first, who offers me a job first. And you have to be fast because, people these days they're not waiting. Whatever their situation may be at their current agency or whatever their, situation be, as far as their entry level applicants, like they're not waiting anymore.
Okay.
And there's no loyalty. Like you don't say, "Oh, I'm holding out for Wallingford." It's like whoever gives me a job, I'm going to that agency, and that's you just whoever offers it first. And that's where we're dealing with it now. I mean, it's just we're trying to beat other agencies to the punch so we can hire them.
Okay, well, maybe we can talk to, or Mr. Mayor, do you have anything, I don't know if you know why that process is in place? Is that an HR function?
I'm not aware of the details of that process.
Okay, we can give Mr. Hutt a call, because it sounds like if that's something, maybe there's a good reason for it that I'm just unaware of, but if we can change that, it sounds like it might help you out, maybe we can talk about that. Is that also why I had flagged the new officers that you put in for, that were not approved in this budget? It looks like their starting is about 92,000. Is that because they would be certified?
Right. So we plan to start them. If you were a certified officer, you could come in at, we could start you at step 3.
Okay. And
because yes, our pay is better. I will say that, and I'm grateful to the entire council for passing that contract because that was so good for our officers. But the crazy part is we're still low.
Yeah.
Even with that, massive increase that really, like I said, that was the best contract, and I've been on the other side of the table for a while, and that was the best contract our police have ever gotten. But still, there's other agencies that are still higher, which is crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, they're starting at 110 in some agencies.
Yeah, because it looks like our lowest patrol officer was at like 77. Is that the low, or there might have been one even lower?
Yeah, for year one.
For year one, yeah. Is that the lowest, 77, I think?
Yes.
Yeah. And then I saw that those 4 positions would have started at 92, but that's because they're certified. They're already
anticipating certified, because ultimately, as much as you do like entry level, certified is plug and play. Like you put them on in a car, get them acclimated to the agency, and you can put them on the road, and you just, filled a hole that would have taken a year, if you waited the other way.
Yeah, sure. I think I ask this every year and nobody ever likes it, but the police officer at the Wishing Well, that's done, that's never coming back? Is that
The problem with the police officer at the Wishing Well is that you took them off the road from, all right, so it's been a while, 8 o'clock to 9:15, and then you would take them back off the road from 9:30 to 12, and then 2:15 to 3:45. It was great, but we weren't as busy, right? So the benefit of commercial is that it brings people to your town, right? The detriment of commercial is that it increases your call volume in that area for us, right? So that's a 2.5 car. So that 2.5 car has Center Street all the way to the 68 connector, so, and everything in between. So you're at Walmart, you're at Tractor Supply, you're taking those calls. So to be able to devote just someone to stand there, I couldn't do it.
Okay.
It's just based on what that zone does. Like we really couldn't do it anymore.
But it's purely budget. Was there any other reason why you wouldn't want that? I mean, did the officers not like that?
The old school officers do.
Yeah.
The newer guys
Not so
don't.
much.
Generation, I don't think they're gonna want to stay.
All right, so mixed feelings. I mean, I always liked it. I just thought it was a nice, a lot of people walk uptown, like, some of the kids would walk from Holy Trinity School.
Nice community service
Yeah, I just
position,
thought it
right?
was a nice, exactly.
High
the
visibility community
outreach.
But as it gets warmer,
Sure.
so our daytime lieutenant does have a plan in place to come down to Center Street and start doing walking beats, and then we can start incorporating the bike patrol down there. So we will come back to that area. I mean, because it is a focal point of town, so it is a plan to come and do things in that area again once it warms up a little bit.
Okay, nice. Yeah, especially now that you're not right there anymore. And that's another thing too. I know it's not in this budget, but just, while you're here, is there any talk of maybe having a satellite location uptown? I know when we had first moved, we kind of talked about that. Is that in the work, anything?
If I may.
Sure.
Yeah. We can't give up the armory because of the cost of moving the communication tower. So we're going to be presenting the council with a plan to repurpose it, and we've discussed with the police department having a satellite office in that front north corner where the dispatch area was.
Okay.
So we would staff it, we discussed potentially staffing it at peak hours and weekends.
Great, thank you. All right, we'll look forward to seeing that. Telephone, again, like I asked fire. It looks like yours actually went substantially down. Is that since you moved?
Our telephone is a little different than fire's. So our telephone incorporates the regular telephone system, right? And then a lot of dispatch stuff. So there's a SIP connector, there's a connector, an auto dialer for the fire alarm incorporated into that. All the modems and the cruisers are under that line. So every single modem, every single computer in the car is connected by a modem, which is through LTE. So that's where that comes from. And then we're still paying for fiber. So don't forget, we still have a fiber run that goes from Doolittle to now the police department, which we're converting over to the new police department. So we pay for that. And then we still have a fiber run that goes from 135 North Main to 100 Barnes because we still have software and equipment in the old buildings, in the communications room. So we still pay for that. So that's where that number comes from. And of that 79,000, a majority of that is the fiber.
Okay, all right, thank you. The next line, I think, and you spoke about this a little bit before, utilities. So that went drastically up from 2 years ago. Is that just the sheer square footage now of the new facility?
Yeah, and a lot of that are estimates. You know, we worked with the comptroller to kind of figure out where it is because we have yet to see an air conditioning cycle. We saw a partial heating cycle. You know, we saw the electric bills come in. They were a little expensive. So we're just trying to deal with that and then also deal with the system itself. And, you know, how do we appropriately use the heating system or the cooling system? And, you know, how do we make that optimal for everyone involved? So it's an estimate.
Okay.
Obviously, we hope that it comes in lower than what we budgeted for. But there's no way to kind of figure that out until we actually experience it.
Okay. Same question with custodial, which is line 56736. That is much higher than it previously was. Again, is that just sheer square footage of the new facility?
Yeah, so the old building, we had a bid for custodial, and then we rebid it for the new building, and obviously it came in a little higher. And the two people there's two individuals that clean the entire building, and they're amazing. I don't know how they do it, but yeah, the reason why it's a little higher is because they had to go and get rebid for the new building.
Okay, that makes sense. The new police department building, the bonding for that is reflected in our bonding, not part of your budget, correct? All right, I just want to make that clear. That's separate from your operational budget.
Correct.
All right, I think that's all I have. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Just a couple of quick things. So, looking at the CAFR over the past several years, your salary line is you always come out in the black on the salary line. With the hiring issues that you were talking about earlier, how frequently are we ever at full staff?
We've come close, but we've never really, have not gotten there, and it's not by a lack of effort. So, you know, the reality is I have four openings for entry or for officers in general, right? And I have 4 viable candidates. It's just a matter of getting to them, right? So in a perfect world, I get all 4 of them and we're full. But that perfect world never, unfortunately, happens. So, you know, one person backs out, one person goes another place. Now I got to wait for the next test to happen. And in the meantime, you know, I have someone retire, so we're behind. So we've gotten close. I've never actually been full. So I would like to see what it's like to be full, but.
So if you think we're short a few officers, that sort of exacerbates that issue because you're never really getting even to where we budgeted for, right?
Correct.
So going back to your other examples, you said our pay is competitive with the surrounding market. How else would our department be attractive, or how attractive is Wallingford as a town to work for, say, a certified police officer?
So it's exponentially been better, right? So you have a new building and so what we're doing too is that, we have the benefit of running training classes now that we have a state-of-the-art training classroom, right? So, you have 40 officers in there for a week, they see the building, you have people asking questions. A lot of people that are younger are talking to their friends. So, Wallingford is regarded as a good place to work. It's making the people, what is the situation that you're jumping from your one agency to come to us, right? So as far as entry level goes, a lot of people, we've interviewed a bunch of people over the past couple months for entry level, and they have said, we've heard good things about the town. We've heard good things about the agency, which is nice. And then, you get to interview the person in the new building, right? So that goes a long way into convincing the individual that, hey, listen, this is the place that, you should come to. It's just the numbers, like just a matter of, I would love just more numbers. More numbers on a list makes our hiring process a lot easier.
Thank you. Anything else from the council? Mr. Laffin?
Thank you. Chief, you were referencing, then you got to get them into the the academy.
Correct.
In the past, the chiefs have referenced that even if if you could hire all 6 people right now, can the academy handle 6 people from Wallingford?
So they're trying. So what ends up happening is you get a form and you fill out a request form for post in Meriden, and then you get an opportunity to also do satellite academies. So New Haven, Waterbury, Bridgeport, Hartford, Milford. Milford's a good academy. But you're not guaranteed those spots. What ends up happening is, we'll get 4, or 2, but it's a matter of can you fill that, right? So, we've had in the past had full academy classes and we've had to give seats back because we couldn't fill it or we lost someone at the last second. But you really don't know until you fill the form out and they get back to you and say your request has been accepted. What I can say is that now that Chief Wider is taking over the operations of Post, he's making it a point to run more training classes. And they've went to a residential only up at Meriden, so that also helps because now you have people there 5 days a week staying over, which as far as logistics go for us makes it so much easier to manage. But his hope is to start running more classes. They have been running more classes. It's just a matter of lining up the testing process to coincide with the academy class when they start.
It's also the benefit of the laterals to having availability of hiring certified officers too. So
Right, they
if you don't get the seats in the academy, maybe we can go off that certified list and grab a couple there.
Okay. Oh, great, thank you.
Anyone else in the council? Anyone from the public? All right, thank you very much, Chief.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Have a good night. All right, and last but not least is Public Works. Good evening, gentlemen.
Good evening. Good evening, Mr. Chairman, councilors. I guess for your record, Rob Boltramitis, Director, Stephen Palermo, Superintendent. I'll tell you, after the fire presentation, if Chief Ventura pulled out a PowerPoint, I was going to leave. So, maybe next year, though. I should have my laptop by then and
fingers crossed.
Be well versed, exactly. So, getting a little late, I will keep it short. Just a little reminder about what we do at DPW. We maintain 213 miles of town road, 9 municipal parking lots, 7 municipal buildings. You all just recently seen the facility condition assessments, which were recently performed and delivered to all of you. We maintain 22 parks, 10 of them have athletic fields. We operate a full garage, 5 mechanics under our garage foreman, takes care of our fleet of vehicles, our heavy equipment, as you heard, fire department, police department, employee pool cars, etc. So we oversee the operation of the solid waste transfer station, the recycling facility and the compost center. We administer the senior trash coupon program. We assist state marshals with evictions. We decorate the town. We help with, we could go on and on. I think you understand the vast amount of work that Public Works does here. So our proposed budget this year, as always, there's three major components: salaries and wages, operating and maintenance, and then our departmental capital requests. So I'll quickly go through each of those. So from a salaries and wages standpoint, our budget request is very similar to last year. It does reflect a 2.8% increase, and that is strictly due to contractual wage increases for those bargaining units that they're entitled to at this point. We are not requesting any additional staff for this year. Our department has 48 full-time employees. 37 of those are maintainers. Those are the people you're gonna see on our roads and in our parks. We have, as I mentioned, 5 mechanics in the garage, 2 admin support personnel, and then 4 managers. So there's myself, there's Stephen as the superintendent, garage foreman, and a road foreman. So what's interesting, just some quick notes about our staffing level. So like I said, 48 full-time employees. What we've found over many of the past years is we've had significant vacancies, but particularly in the maintainer levels, the people who are working on the roads, working in the parks. And, you know, we'd have vacancies 6 to 8 at a time out of those 37 positions. So you're operating at a 70% capacity there. We've actually had some very good luck recently in filling those positions and also maintaining people. So one of the things we did to do that, what we recognize is we weren't having crew leaders, maintainer 4s, maintainer 3s necessarily leave our employment. You know, obviously there's retirements, you get into departmental transfers, or, you know, the one-off, somebody might leave. But what we're finding is the people that we're just hiring, coming in as maintainer 2s at first step, a couple months, a year in, they would leave us for another community to make another $1 an hour. I mean, it's significant. So what we did, we had conversations with the mayor in the HR department, and you know, we have the ability, and we've started to take it, to offer people the appropriate step coming in based on their experience. So instead of coming in at step 1, maybe you could come in at step 3 if your experience was, you know, commensurate to that. At this point, so I know last week the council had requested some staff information from all the departments, and at the time I wrote that memorandum that hopefully got to you. Out of those 37 maintainers, we only had 2 vacancies instead of 6 or 8. So what we're hopeful and we're confident in is we can go into the next fiscal year and actually be staffed up. And, you know, so really one of the reasons of not asking for more positions, we've never been at a point where we can assess what we can do if we're fully staffed. And hopefully this year is the difference for that. So I think I got a little long-winded there, more than I wanted to. But I think it was good just to explain, you know, our staffing level and how we're optimistic that we're, you know, finally going to be at a point and maintain a point that we could provide the services and then determine, you know, where we're at. So next is the operating and maintenance. That's obviously where we pay for all our materials and our supplies to do our work. It's how we hire our vendors, custodial services, the building trades for HVAC, plumbing, electrical. I won't go through each line, but we could discuss any one of them in particular. A couple estimates that we've made. So actually we're looking at some potential decreases. And one is utility consumption. So that's a pretty big ticket item, but it's what we do is we base it on like a 5-year average. And we've just seen some downward trends in our overall consumption. So we can actually request a little less this year. Similarly, gas and diesel pricing is down, so we're looking for, you know, asking for a little less money in that line item as well. Our custodial line item is dropping as well. There's a caveat to that. So while we are not going to oversee the janitorial custodian services for the Park and Rec building, they will be overseeing it themselves, so there'll actually be an increase in their line item, but ours is a downward trend. So overall, we are almost the same as last year. Last year's request was $2.96 million operating and maintenance, and this year is $2.97. So a very, very slight increase overall. So last is our capital requests. and that's the equipment we need to do our job. So a couple of these are relatively easy for me to say, smaller purchases, but I'll just go through them. One is the replacement of an automotive lift in our garage. It would replace an automotive lift that's some 24 years old. We're also asking for a snowplow for one of our front end loaders. That is a piece of equipment that is out doing snow removal at a lot of our public parking lots, as well as PD, Park and Rec, et cetera. We're asking for a rotary brush cutter attachment for our skid steer. That is to, cut vegetative debris and get us into some, access into some areas that we don't presently have. And more significantly, we're asking for a replacement to a crew cab flatbed. So that is a vehicle that takes our workers out on a daily basis. That will replace a vehicle that is 17 years old, rotted and in poor condition, but it is used daily. We depend on it to get out to a job site. And more significantly, we're asking for the replacement of a Class 8 plow dump truck, and that's a $300,000 ticket item. It would replace a unit that's 21 years old, but I got to tell you, it's very important to us, and I know it's a large ticket item. When we are fighting a winter storm, we have 23 of those trucks out on the road. And that's in addition to smaller trucks that are doing the parking lots or front end loaders that might be out there. We have 21 plow runs, each one with that plow truck, and 2 floaters that can go and help areas that are falling behind. That's 23 trucks. If we don't replace one a year, or let me back up. If we replace only 1 truck a year, which is what we're asking for, we're still depending on a vehicle that's going to be 24 years old out in the road, and our average vehicle is 12 years old. If we don't fund that, we will fall behind, and I promise you, we will be back here in another year asking for multiple vehicles. So, and I think we can all recognize that anytime we do that and we defer a purchase, you pay more in the long run. So it's really very important to us. I really can't stress enough, and I understand the position this council's in, and, you're going to evaluate everybody's budgets. Capital items, I heard it this evening, might be something that's kind of an easier target, but I really have to defend that plow truck to you. So overall, our department capital purchases are less than $500,000. Overall, outside of the capital, our wages, our operating and maintenance is only I say only, but it's a 1.8% increase over last year. So, less than the overall increase that I think the town's annual budget is seeing this year. So that's a brief summary, and we certainly hope to get your support. We're both here for any questions.
Thank you very much. Starting with Councilor Laffin.
Thank you. You brought up the custodial thing, which I saw the explanation for in all the backup materials. Your custodial line was originally at 170, and now you're getting 120, but the Park and Rec department jumped to 117,000. It might not be your question, but since you brought it up too, and we're starting here, I'm just curious what the difference is and why.
So I've had conversations with the Park and Rec director about that. He did prepare the bid that went out for those janitorial services. And I'm sure you will ask him. Yeah. I believe the bid changed to a small degree to get him the services that he needed that he may not have been getting previously. Okay. Plus the fact that it's rebid, and in my opinion, you're always going to pay more every time it's rebid, rather than being in year 3 or 4 of an older contract.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks. That was it.
Thank you. Councilor Fishbein.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, Rob, Steve.
Good evening.
Good evening.
I suspect you're the appropriate ones to ask about the cap and non-recurring budget, because that sort of lays out some duties over the next year. Is that appropriate?
Yeah, no, I think that's fair enough. I mean, there's some items that, maybe engineering department or Park and Rec, but we certainly, at DPW, some of these items are ours.
Sure. So the townwide paving program, I know in years past, Mr. McCauley would put a list of what roads were going to get done Do you have some sort of a list? You know, we get calls about, you know, my road, you hear it. We got the zone system, and I'd like to be able to respond to some of these people and say, well, you're not on the list, or you are on the list.
So it's a great question. So, I apologize if there's an oversight of not including a list of roads. I don't think we've listed roads for many years now, in all honesty. So, and you're right, we get those calls all the time. What I tell people is the truth. There's really not a list. There's a list of what we know we're doing immediately. Beyond that, roads are on a radar. And the reason is, as soon as there's a list and we tell somebody, you're gonna get done in 2028, conditions change and things have to slide. And you end up, being a victim of what you were trying to intend and give somebody some good news, because they're not happy if they got removed from the list. We know what we're doing this spring for roads under our paving program. Those are already funded. I have and with Stephen, of course, and with Carl, our road foreman, because we do the selection of what's going to get done. We have a very good understanding of what we plan on doing with this pavement money as well. So I don't know if there was a particular road in question, or.
We get sporadic calls from people, and I understand, credibility is everything, right? So, I would think that if you tell somebody that they're on the list and then the weather changes, it gets cold sooner, you can't get asphalt and all that stuff, that they would be the first the following spring. But I just know that I was helpful in the past, so I'll leave it as is. The downtown parking lot improvements, there's $80,000 that's attributable for this budget. What is the plan there?
Well, the plan hasn't been formalized, and we need to, on the administrative side, meet as a group, and that would obviously involve Public Works. It's going to involve the engineering department, and it's also going to involve the law department. Now, one might ask, why the law department? Well, a lot of our municipal parking lots are based on lease agreements, where we don't necessarily own the underlying land, but there's a lease. We're going to be hard pressed to put tax dollars into a public parking lot that has a lease agreement unless that lease has been renewed and we can guarantee the public's going to maintain public parking there for some period into the future. So what this line item is, it's the first $80,000 to start to improve some of the parking lots that we know desperately need it. So which ones it is, can't necessarily tell you at this point, but we're going to start making improvements to the lots that need it.
So when do we anticipate, because you're asking us to approve this budget, and I know one of the areas that, I'm dating myself, is behind Sprafke's and Wallingford Flower has been, some of us, weren't even born when Sprafke's was there. But anyway, as I said, dating myself, there's a level of trust, but I just, I don't anticipate somebody from the public actually calling me on this, but I think it would be important if we knew what area was being addressed, because we may think that as counselors that another area needed to be addressed.
Unfortunately,
Wait, I'm sorry, Rob, before you go, Mayor, did you have something you wanted to address first?
Yeah. So, Sprafke's.
Next to
Buster Brown's.
Get your
Come
Buster
on,
Browns
Browns,
out,
yeah.
exactly.
right?
Yeah. That's one of the lease parking lots, and that's a little complicated. But the 2 blocks down the hill, the pavement areas we own. So those will be easier and will very likely happen early in the next fiscal year. We're working on an improvement plan for both of the parking lots where we actually own pavement. And we'll be addressing the adjacent property owners to get their participation, because, we want to avoid having teeth of old parking spaces in our new pavement area. So
Okay, that's fair. That's informative and that's fair. Thank you. The Gregory Road sidewalk extension, I don't recall this being on a previous cap and non-recurring plan. I know where Gregory Road is. It's off of Highland. What's going on there? Because I see two appropriations. I see $70,000 in this budget and then $280,000 in next year's budget.
Yeah, so I'm going to have to defer that. So my understanding is Ms. Kapuscinski will be here tomorrow evening, so that is an engineering project.
Okay, that's fair. Looking at, because this is a 6-year cap and non-recurring plan, there is an entry of $650,000 for a community pool park. What is anticipated there, considering that a lot of people want to know what's going on with that area?
I understand that Mr. Michaels, the Director of Park and Rec, will be here tomorrow evening also. He's probably the appropriate person to ask that. That wasn't my entry.
Okay. And then it's probably the same answer to defer to another one. Somebody anticipated that next year we're going to have an additional $1 million in income in this that I've never seen, and I've been up here 15 years or something like that. We're usually around 2 million. Any idea where the additional $1 million suddenly comes from?
No, but God bless you, whoever. It's probably not the first time, at least, that I've seen a future year in the cap non exceed what the pilot's actually going to contribute. So, I'm not sure where that extra $1 million will come from, or at the time that next year when 26, 27 is being figured out, if something has to slide out into an additional year, into a later year.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may, Mayor, do you have? Yeah, please. Yeah.
Some of those are on there to be able to use other grants if it's possible, right? So if we want to use LOSUP money for any of these projects, it has to be in the 6-year capital plan. So we're not saying that these are possible projects. We don't have to do these projects, but they're on there to show that we might be going in that direction.
Okay, so the large one being the community pool park at 650.
Right, so I think the answer to that one is if the bids come in at $12 million and you guys decide we're not doing a pool there, something needs to be done there. So maybe this would be money to be able to, it's in here to be able to apply for a grant if we were just going to demo the pools and put something else there. That's the intent of that 650.
Okay, that's prudent and also forward-looking, so I don't have a problem with that. So thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Councilor Tata.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Evening again.
Good evening.
Councilor Laffin asked a question, but then left me with another question about the custodial services. So it was my understanding that Parks and Rec was $100,000 that they were taking on, but then yours only went down by 50,000. Did you have an increase as well?
So yes, so our number is based on dropping the custodial services for Park and Rec, based on what our annual expense was going to be based on that bid, and also reflects new bids that we just opened for janitorial services for the senior center in the Scout STEM building, which went up.
So do you currently budget for those two buildings?
Oh, yes.
But the bids went up by $50,000 for, well, maybe not by 50,000. The entire line item's going. I mean, if Park and Rec took off 100,000, but then those added 50,000, is that where the
that's
roughly?
about right. That's
Okay.
about right.
But you currently provide custodial for both of those?
Correct.
Okay.
For several buildings. I mean, so it's Town Hall, it's our DPW facility, it's the historic railroad station, senior center, Scout STEM. Yeah.
How is that? So there's one of the things that always not confuses me, but that's a little bit tricky about your budget is I think you have a lot of things in your budget that really aren't your department. And so it makes you look like your budget is much higher than I think it really is if these other things were not kind of dumped, weren't your responsibility. So that, for example, so if we have the Scout and STEM building, for example, it's basically leased out. It's leased for free or for $1 or whatever the nominal payment is per year. But we also pay, well, your department's also paying for their custodial services?
Yes. Same with the senior center, which is a nonprofit
Right,
in a town building.
Okay. Okay.
Same as the railroad, which is the adult ed, which,
Right, so Board of Ed's not paying that, you're paying that.
correct.
How did that all get determined? I mean, is that just
Long
goes
before my
way
time.
back? Okay, okay. So, I mean, especially that one, it seems that would be in Board of Ed's budget. All right, well, maybe, I don't know, something interesting that came up this year. Sorry, I just have some notes flagged here. I highlighted the part where you said that you have, and you said it tonight, your highest staffing level in recent years. So that's great, because I know usually every year you're struggling. So that sounds like a nice change there. Telephone, again, you even said in your note, it's going to increase slightly. Are you only paying for your own department's telephones, or you're not paying for anything else or outside?
No, so we pay, this changed a couple years ago, where we now pay for all of the town hall building. So it used to be a line item in everybody's individual, departmental budget. And maybe Mr. Setter remembers when it changed. It was a couple of years back.
Yeah, I kind of remember now that you're saying it.
Yeah. But what we found over this last year, we've got a vendor who maintains a system here in this building, and, there's a need for special requests here and there. And I'll give you an example. We remodeled the health department here on the second floor. When that happened, they vacated their office. They went over to, the emergency management building on Hope Hill. Those phone lines had to be moved, and it wasn't free. So they had to be moved to go over there to continue business, and they had to get moved again when they came back into their renovated space. So, and things like that, I would anticipate, having to do that again in the next year at Town Hall for other offices.
Okay. And I'm sure, I don't recall either the reason for the change, but I'm sure it made sense at the time. But it's something else that's in your budget that's really not your department's expense.
It changed when we got the new phone system, but it made sense. We were wasting a lot of time. There was like a trunk bill that had to get allocated to each department.
Mm-hmm.
So it was kind of, when it came in, it was easier to just do the one bill and have it paid, just kind of like the, telephone servicing the whole building, same as, custodial service or anything else. It made sense, but it did, lessen the work in the finance department of, why are we trying to bill somebody $20 for the use of the phone when everyone needs a phone?
Sure, yeah. Efficiency-wise, it certainly makes sense. Unfortunately, now it looks like it's a cost for you that's really not your cost. I just wanted to bring this up. I don't really have a question about it, but for the sake of the public, under in your memo on page 2, under purchase services, the software that you're looking to get, do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I thought that was something people have been asking about for a while. That's a positive.
Yeah. So, and I apologize. So, are you referring? Do you have a copy of?
Oh, I do. Yeah, I can actually read it.
That's right. I just want to make so that is my transmittal letter to the mayor when I transmitted my proposed budget. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep, dated March 10th.
Because here's what happened, Councilor Tata, is I asked for that in the incorrect place. It was under operating and maintenance as a line item. And I believe the budget sheets that you're seeing, that item got moved to a capital request, a departmental capital request. So you would actually see it there now for $40,000.
Okay.
So, yeah, asset management. So, this would be a cloud-based software where we could start to collect data and have our assets by category. Yeah, you can see I'm struggling with this one. I am not the most, informational technology advance here.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. We currently have paper systems for everything, and we need to change that. We need to get more efficient. If somebody calls in a tree right now, it gets written on that little pink piece of paper. It gets passed around for somebody to inspect it, maybe assign it to a vendor or to a crew. It comes back, we're handwriting on it that it was taken down this date, and it goes into a paper file. The same goes for potholes. The same goes for our assets such as roadway segments, catch basins. All these things, we can start to compile a database. In fact, with the facility condition assessments, if you take a look at those, I'm sure you all have, at the very end, part of that assignment was actually collecting data for building systems, like HVAC systems. So what they had to do, they had to go to that HVAC system, perhaps on the roof, wherever it was located, and look at the tag. When was it installed? Like, when was it manufactured? And the nice thing about having an asset management system is we can track important paperwork. So if we get a new piece of equipment, we can enter that warranty data. We'll know when it expires. Right now, if we have unit number 17 on Park and Rec go down and it needs a compressor, unless somebody remembers, hey, that compressor might only be 4 years old, it's under warranty. We don't know. It's not very efficient. So this is something that'll help get us there. We have to walk before we run, and we have to crawl before we walk. It's going to take time to build, but that's what that's all about. And one of the components could also be, if you've heard, what is it, see it, click it, report it. Some other municipalities have a nice convenient way. If you see a potential defect from the town of Wallingford, whether it's a potentially hazardous tree or a pothole, you can click it, it comes in, it's reported officially, and we would have a much easier time trying to track how we dealt with it.
Yeah, I think
Sorry for stumbling at the beginning.
No, it's
but
okay.
It's actually, it could be very.
It's nothing you've had to use before, right?
No.
So, no, I think it's great. Especially like the last thing you talked about, where citizens can, click on
It's a
there.
potential feature of that type of system.
Yeah, I think that would be a nice feature. So great with that. On that same page, let's see, we already talked about that. That was the custodial. The parking lot repairs at the public library. So that's $75,000. Your department is fully paying for that?
So, correct me if I'm wrong, that is on the cap non-recurring.
I believe so, yes.
I believe it made it to cap
Yes, it
CNR.
is.
So parking lot repairs, library, $75,000. So it's not a departmental capital at this point. I think I listed it that way in the transmittal, but it is on CNR. So just very briefly, what this is a reconfiguration, particularly of the ADA spaces. They're not it's not easy to maneuver in and out of them right now. So this would basically reconfigure those so they're better utilized. And we're hoping it also will allow us to get rid of an old buried fuel tank there that's no longer utilized by the library. I mean, they converted from oil to natural gas a long, long time ago. And, it's something that needs to be environmentally dealt with and eliminated.
Okay. And that's, so that looks like that's not affecting your budget because it's in cap and non now. Okay. We kind of already, well, we didn't really talk about this. The pavement condition assessment through SCROG, that is ongoing, it looks like. And do you have any update on that, or?
I don't, other than so let me go back 1 year ago. When I was here before you a year ago, I had asked for a line item for, I think it was under engineering consultant, and it was a pretty significant number. It was about $50,000. And I told you, I said, the reason for it, we want to hire a consultant to come in and evaluate our 213 miles of road to help us, rate them and come up with various potentially alternative pavement treatments, to extend the life of them. So that was something that we totally intended to do, as a municipality, funded ourselves. What happened is the South Central Council of Regional Governments that we belong to, SCROG, was doing the exact study and looking for participants. And we said, let's jump on it. We can reprogram our money back into actually physically improving the road. SCROG has the money to fund that program. So they are currently undertaking that assessment. In fact, I think this week they just started going out. They have a specialized vehicle that goes and looks at the deterioration of the roadways. And so I'm hopeful that we can see a preliminary study later this spring and it finalized in the fall. And as part of that, what our plan is to approach the mayor and say, hey, listen, here's how our roadways are rated right now. And maybe the average rating on a scale of 0 to 100 is a 63. If we want to be a 70 community, here's the initial investment we have to put into it. And that's why you could see us coming back and saying, listen, we need a capital project here to get up to speed. And then this is what, once we're at that 70, here's what we anticipate it's going to cost us every year to stay at 70.
Okay. And is that, so you didn't end up using that consulting money for that because SCROG ended up doing it, correct?
Correct.
Okay. It looks like this year you have consulting at 50,000. Currently it was 60. What is that for a different project?
It is. So again, through the facility condition assessments, there were some recommendations for additional studies, engineering architectural studies on some of those buildings. So that's what I was building into that portion of the budget for this year.
Okay, got it. I think that's all I have. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Anyone else from the council? Members of the public? All right, seeing no further questions, I think you're all set. Thank you very much, Joe.
Thank you very much. Have a great night.
Seeing nothing else on the agenda, this meeting is adjourned.